Welcome, weary traveler, to the world of medieval castles, those mighty fortresses that dominated the European landscape for nearly 1,000 years. Tonight, as you settle into comfort and prepare for rest, we will explore not just the cold stone walls and imposing towers you might imagine, but the warm, living communities that thrived within them. Close your eyes and imagine walking through massive wooden gates, your footsteps echoing on cobblestones as you enter a world both familiar and utterly foreign. The air smells of wood smoke, baking bread, horses, and humanity packed close together. Above you, banners snap in the wind. Around you, the sounds of daily life, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the chatter of servants drawing water from the well, the laughter of children playing in the bailey, the bark of hunting dogs, and somewhere distant, the sweet notes of a minstrel's lute. This is not the silent, empty ruin you might visit as a tourist today, but a castle alive, a self-contained world where hundreds or even thousands of people lived, worked, celebrated, quarreled, loved, and died. It was fortress and home, military stronghold and administrative center, symbol of power and place of everyday mundane routine. It was where the Lord dispensed justice and feasted his guests, where the lady managed an enormous household, where knights trained for war, where servants labored from dawn to dusk, where children grew up learning the complex rules of feudal society, and where everyone from the highest noble to the lowest scullery maid found their place in the intricate hierarchy of medieval life. Our journey will take us through every part of the castle, from the deepest dungeons, where prisoners languished in darkness, to the highest tower rooms, where noble ladies embroidered by candlelight. We will explore the Great Hall, where feasts lasted for hours and crucial political alliances were forged. The kitchens where enormous fires roared and dozens of cooks prepared meals for hundreds. The chapel where everyone from lord to servant prayed for salvation. The armory where weapons were stored and maintained. The stables where precious war horses were tended with care rivaling that given to nobles, and the countless small chambers where the castle's residents slept, worked, and passed their days. We will meet the people who inhabited these spaces, the lord who owned the castle and bore the enormous responsibility of protecting his lands and people, the lady who managed the complex household and held authority when her husband was away at war, the knights who trained constantly for combat, the squires and pages learning chivalry, the steward who managed finances, the chaplain who tended souls, the master of the horse, the falconer, the huntsman, the marshal, the chamberlain, the butler who managed the wine, not the modern butler you might imagine, the cook, the baker, the brewer, the blacksmith, the armorer, the carpenter, the mason, the grooms, the pages, the serving women, the laundresses, the spinners and weavers, the wet nurses, and countless others whose labor kept the castle functioning. We will experience the rhythms of castle life, the rising at dawn, the rounds of prayers that structured each day, the meals served at specific times, the seasonal changes that affected everything from food availability to military campaigns, the great feasts that marked holy days and important occasions, the tournaments where knights displayed their prowess, the hunts that provided both sport and food, the long winter evenings when stories were told and songs sung, and the ever-present possibility of siege, attack, or war. We will understand that castles were not uniform, but evolved over centuries, from simple wooden motte and bailey structures thrown up quickly after the Norman conquest to the massive stone fortresses of the High Middle Ages with their concentric walls and sophisticated defenses, to the later castles that became more palace than fortress as gunpowder changed warfare and comfort became more valued than defensive strength. We will explore castles across medieval Europe, the mighty crusader castles of the Holy Land like cracked des Chevaliers, the royal castles of England like the Tower of London and Windsor, the elegant chateaux of France's Loire Valley, the mountain fortresses of Germany and Austria, the Moorish castles of Spain that blended Islamic and Christian architectural traditions, and the Scottish and Welsh castles that witnessed centuries of conflict. But most of all, we will seek to understand what it was actually like to live in a medieval castle, not the romanticized fantasy of knights and fair maidens that popular culture presents, but the real experience of cold stone chambers, smoky fires, limited privacy, rigid social hierarchies, constant work, religious devotion, political intrigue, the ever-present threat of violence, and the small daily pleasures and comforts that made life bearable and sometimes even joyful. We approach this world with both fascination and critical thinking. Medieval castles represent impressive architectural and engineering achievements, centers of culture and learning in an often violent age, and communities where complex social relationships played out. Yet they also symbolized oppression and inequality, were built through the labor of peasants who had no choice, housed people who held others in bondage, and existed primarily as instruments of military domination and social control. The medieval period itself, roughly from the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century to the Renaissance in the 15th century, was neither the dark ages of complete ignorance and barbarism, nor the romantic age of chivalry and courtly love that later imagination created. It was a complex, contradictory period of human history that produced magnificent cathedrals and brutal wars, sophisticated philosophy and widespread illiteracy, codes of honor and horrific violence, moments of surprising tolerance and acts of terrible persecution. So breathe deeply, let your imagination travel back across the centuries, and prepare to spend the night in a medieval castle. Feel the cold stone beneath your feet and the warmth of the fire on your face. Smell the rushes strewn on the floor and the roasting meat in the kitchen. Hear the calls of the watchman on the walls and the whispered prayers in the chapel. Taste the spiced wine and coarse bread. Experience the strange combination of grandeur and squalor, power and vulnerability, community and hierarchy that was life inside the fortress walls. Let us begin our journey at the very foundation, understanding what castles were, why they were built, and how they evolved over the centuries. Before we can walk through a castle's daily life, we must understand what castles were, how they developed, and what purposes they served. The castle was not merely a building but a complex military, social, political, and economic institution that shaped medieval society. What is a castle? The definition: a castle is more than just a fortified building. It is the fortified private residence of a lord. The key characteristics: fortification built for defense, with walls, towers, and other military features. Private residence, the home of a lord nobleman and his household. Center of lordship, the administrative center of the lord's estates and power. What distinguishes castles? Not a city wall. City fortifications protected entire communities, but weren't residences. Not a palace. Palaces were residences of rulers, but not primarily defensive. Not a simple fortified house. Manor houses might have defensive features but lacked the scale and purpose of castles. The unique combination: castles combined residence, fortress, administrative center, and symbol of power in one structure. The origins of castles. The collapse of Roman order. The Roman legacy. The Roman Empire maintained order through professional armies, fortified cities, and roads. When Rome fell in the West, 5th century CE, central authority collapsed. Local strongmen filled the power vacuum. The need for local defense. Without Roman legions, communities needed protection. Local lords built fortifications. These early fortifications were crude wooden palisades on earthworks. The Carolingian Empire, 8th–9th centuries, Charlemagne and his successors briefly unified much of Western Europe, built some stone fortifications. But the empire fragmented after Charlemagne's death, 814 CE. The Viking, Magyar, and Saracen raids. 9th–10th centuries external threats. Vikings from Scandinavia raided coasts and rivers. Magyars, Hungarians raided from the east. Saracens, Muslims raided from the Mediterranean. These raids devastated communities and weakened central authorities. The local response: lords built fortifications to protect themselves and their people. These were initially simple, wooden towers on earthen mounds. This was the beginning of the Castle Age. The birth of the castle, the motte and bailey. The first true castles, 10th–11th centuries, the motte and bailey design. The motte, an earthen mound, either natural or artificially created. Typically 5–10 meters, 16–33 feet high, sometimes much taller. Flat top. On the top, a wooden tower, the keep or donjon. Surrounded by a ditch, the mound's earth came from digging the ditch. The bailey, an enclosed courtyard at the base of the motte, surrounded by a wooden palisade fence and ditch. Contained the lord's hall, chapel, kitchens, stables, workshops, and housing for soldiers and servants. The bridge, a wooden bridge connected the moat to the bailey, could be removed or burned in case of attack. Advantages: speed of construction, could be built quickly, weeks or months. Essential during the Norman conquest of England 1066. William the Conqueror built hundreds of moat and bailey castles to secure his conquest. Effectiveness: the height advantage made them difficult to attack. The earthworks and palisade provided protection, relatively cheap to build. Disadvantages: vulnerability to fire, wooden structures burned easily. Fire arrows or siege engines could destroy them. Decay: wood rots, required constant maintenance. Limited strength, couldn't withstand prolonged siege or powerful siege engines. The transition to stone, 11th-12th centuries. Why build in stone? Permanent stone doesn't burn or rot. Proclaims the Lord's power and wealth. Creates a lasting legacy. Defensive: stone walls are much stronger. Can withstand battering rams and siege engines. Allows for higher walls and towers. Status: stone castles were expensive, only the wealthy could afford them. They symbolized power, prestige, and permanence. The process: gradual replacement. Lords who could afford it replaced wooden structures with stone. Often over generations, building in stone was slow and expensive. The moat was sometimes retained with a stone shell keep on top. The bailey walls were rebuilt in stone. The Great Tower Keep or donjon, 11th-13th centuries. The rectangular keep, the design, a massive stone tower, often rectangular, sometimes square or circular. Multiple stories, typically 3-4 floors. Thick walls 2-4 meters or more. Small windows for defense. The lord's residence and the castle's last line of defense. The layout: typical ground floor, storage, food, weapons, supplies. Sometimes the well, sometimes prison cells. First floor: the great hall, the main living and ceremonial space. The lord's public room. Second floor: the lord's private chambers, solar. Sleeping quarters for the lord and lady. Third floor and above, additional chambers. Sometimes the chapel. Storage. The roof, battlements, crenellations, the alternating solid parts and gaps. Fighting platform. Excellent view of surroundings. Famous examples: the White Tower, Tower of London, begun 1078, built by William the Conqueror. Still stands today. Massive, imposing, a symbol of Norman power. Château de Loches, France, 11th century, one of the earliest and most impressive stone keeps. Rochester Castle, England, 2007, one of the tallest keeps in England, over 30 meters. Advantages of the Great Tower: defense, almost impregnable to assault. Could withstand long sieges. Last refuge if the outer walls fell. Prestige, visible for miles. Proclaimed the Lord's power. Architectural achievement. Disadvantages: cramped, limited space, all functions in one tower. Difficult to expand. Privacy was minimal. Vulnerable points: the entrance, usually first or second floor, reached by external stairs, vulnerable to attackers. Corners could be undermined by sappers. The evolution continues: curtain walls and towers, 12th-13th centuries. The shift in castle design from the keep to the curtain wall, rather than relying on a single strong tower. Castles developed strong perimeter defenses. The curtain wall, a high stone wall enclosing the bailey. Flanking towers at intervals along the wall, allowing defenders to shoot along the wall face. The gatehouse, the most vulnerable point, attackers concentrated here. Developed into a formidable defensive structure. Twin towers flanking the gate. Multiple gates, portcullises, heavy metal grates, and murder holes, openings above through which defenders could drop stones or pour boiling liquids. Concentric castles, late 12th-13th centuries, the ultimate medieval fortress, multiple lines of defense, an inner curtain wall higher, an outer curtain wall lower, so defenders on the inner wall could shoot over it. Towers and gatehouses on both walls. Moats and ditches. The advantages: defense, in depth, attackers faced multiple obstacles. Even if they breached the outer wall, they faced the inner wall. Defenders could retreat to successive lines. Crossfire: attackers in the space between the walls faced fire from two directions, nearly impossible to assault successfully. Famous concentric castles: Crac des Chevaliers, Syria, Crusader Castle, 12th-13th centuries, perhaps the most impressive medieval castle. Withstood numerous sieges. Concentric walls, massive towers, sophisticated design. Beaumaris Castle, Wales, begun 1295, built by Edward I of England. Perfectly symmetrical concentric design, never completed, too expensive but still formidable. Caerphilly Castle, Wales, 1268-1271, extensive water defenses, lakes and moats. concentric walls. One of the largest castles in Britain. The decline of the castle 14th-16th centuries. Why did castles become obsolete? Gunpowder and artillery 14th century onward cannons change warfare. Early cannons were ineffective against thick walls. By the 15th-16th centuries, powerful cannons could breach castle walls. Traditional high stone walls became liabilities, large targets. New fortifications, star forts with low, thick walls and angled bastions, designed to resist artillery. Castles became obsolete as military structures. Changing political structures, centralized monarchies, kings consolidated power. Private fortifications became unnecessary or threatening to royal authority. Kings sometimes ordered castles destroyed, slighted to prevent rebellion. The end of feudalism. Feudalism declined. Lords no longer maintained private armies in castles. The social and economic basis for castles eroded. The shift to comfort, castles become palaces as defense became less critical. Comfort and display became more important. Later castles were really fortified palaces or manor houses. Larger windows, more elaborate decoration, spacious rooms. The château of the French Renaissance, like Chambord or Chenonceau, were more palace than fortress. The purpose of castles. Why build them? Military purposes: defense, protect the lord, his family, and his retainers. Provide refuge for surrounding population during raids or invasions. Control strategic locations, river crossings, mountain passes, harbors. Offense base for military operations. Control conquered territory. The Norman conquest of England relied on castles to dominate the population. Project power into surrounding area. Political and social purposes. Symbol of power, castles proclaimed the lord's authority. Visible for miles, dominating the landscape. Architecture communicated power, wealth, and permanence. Administrative center. The lord governed his lands from the castle. Courts were held here dispensing justice. Taxes and rents were collected. Records were kept. Economic center, managing the estate. The castle was the hub of the lord's economic holdings. Grain, livestock, timber, and other resources from the lord's lands were stored here. The castle garrison and household consumed enormous quantities of food and goods, stimulating local economy. Market and trade. Many castles had associated towns. The castle provided security, attracting merchants and craftsmen. Markets and fairs were often held under the castle's protection. Residential purposes. Home for all its military and political functions. The castle was also a home. The lord, his family, and potentially hundreds of dependents lived here. Birth, childhood, marriage, old age, death, all the stages of life happened within the walls. Hospitality. Medieval lords were expected to provide lavish hospitality. The Great Hall was the center of feasting and entertainment. Guests ranged from fellow nobles to traveling minstrels to pilgrims. The geography of castles. Where were castles built? Strategic locations. High ground, hilltops, and ridges. Defensive advantage. Visibility. Difficult for attackers to assault uphill. Water features. River crossings control trade and military movement. Coastal positions control harbors, defend against seaborne invasion. Islands. Natural moat. Borders and frontiers. Marches. Border regions were heavily fortified. The Welsh Marches border between England and Wales had numerous castles. Crusader castles defended the borders of the Latin states in the Holy Land. Communication routes, roads, rivers, mountain passes. Control of routes meant control of trade, taxation, and military movement. Regional variations. England, numerous castles. The Normans built hundreds. Royal castles. Tower of London, Windsor, and baronial castles. Many survive either as ruins or restored/inhabited. France, from military fortresses to elegant châteaux. The Loire Valley châteaux, Renaissance palaces. Carcassonne, restored medieval city with castle. Germany and Central Europe, mountain castles. Rhine valleys, castle-studded cliffs. Imperial castles, residences of Holy Roman emperors. Teutonic Knights castles in Eastern Europe, Marienburg/Malbork. Spain and Portugal, Moorish castles, Alhambra in Granada. Reconquista castles built during Christian reconquest. Blend of Islamic and Christian architectural influences. The Holy Land Crusader castles, Crac des Chevaliers, Margat, Belvoir. Adapted to desert climate and different siege techniques. Often incorporated Byzantine and Arab architectural ideas. Scotland, Ireland, and Wales tower houses, fortified residences, smaller than castles. Royal and baronial castles. Many built or besieged during conflicts with England. Italy's city-state fortifications, different political structure. Some castles, especially in the north and in Norman Sicily, often integrated with city walls. The castle as symbol. What castles represented power and authority, physical manifestation of lordship. A castle in every village, the ideal reality varied. Domination of the landscape and population. Order and protection in a violent age, castles provided safety. The lord's duty to protect his people, but also control and extraction taxes, labor services. Civilization and culture, centers of literacy, chaplains, clerks. Art and architecture. Music and poetry, troubadours, minstrels. But this culture was limited to the elite. The divine order, medieval society saw hierarchy as divinely ordained. The Lord's power came from God through the king. The castle represented this earthly hierarchy, mirroring heaven. The complexity of castles. Castles were not simple structures, but complex institutions reflecting medieval society's contradictions. They were homes and fortresses, symbols of oppression and protection, centers of culture and instruments of war, communities and hierarchies, expressions of power and vulnerability. Understanding this complexity allows us to see medieval life in its full richness and ambiguity. Now that we understand what castles were and why they existed, let us walk through a typical medieval castle, exploring its physical structure room by room, wall by wall. While no two castles were identical, certain features were common, and understanding these allows us to imagine life within the walls. Approaching the castle. The outer defenses. The moat, a water-filled ditch surrounding the castle. Not universal, depended on location and water availability. Width varied 10-30 meters typical. Depth sufficient to prevent wading 2-4 meters. Purpose prevented attackers from reaching the walls. Prevented tunneling under walls, sappers couldn't tunnel through water. Psychological barrier. Dry ditches where water wasn't available. Dry ditches served similar purposes, often lined with stakes or other obstacles. The drawbridge, a wooden bridge that could be raised. The iconic image, though not all castles had them. Operated by chains or counterweights. When raised, sealed the gate. The barbican, an outer fortification protecting the gate. A walled enclosure with its own gate. Attackers faced multiple gates and confined spaces. Defenders could attack from the walls. The outer bailey or ward, the outermost enclosed area. Contained stables, workshops, storage. Sometimes housing for soldiers and servants. Protected by its own wall in concentric castles. The gatehouse entering the castle. The most vulnerable and heavily defended point, the approach, often indirect, forcing attackers to turn, exposing their unshielded side. Sometimes a bridge over the moat. The gateway, passage through the gatehouse. The gatehouse structure, twin towers flanking the gate, provided elevated positions for defenders. Often housed the portcullis mechanism. The portcullis, a heavy wooden and metal grate, dropped from above to seal the gate. Multiple portcullises in series in the most sophisticated gatehouses. Operated by winches in the room above. Murder holes, machicolations, openings in the ceiling of the passage. Defenders could drop stones, shoot arrows, or pour boiling water or hot sand. Psychological terror trapped attackers. Arrow slits or loopholes, narrow openings in the walls. Wide on the inside, space for the archer. Narrow on the outside, difficult to shoot through from outside. Various shapes, cross-shaped for crossbows, round for early guns. The gates, massive wooden doors. Reinforced with iron, sometimes multiple sets. Barred from inside with heavy timber. Experiencing entry, imagine approaching the gatehouse, the massive stone towers loom above. The dark tunnel of the entrance passage, deliberately intimidating. Your footsteps echo. You're aware of the murder holes above. Finally emerging into the bailey, the enclosed courtyard. The bailey or ward, the courtyard. The heart of castle life, the bailey was not empty space, but the center of daily activity. Buildings and structures against the walls. Buildings were often built against the inner face of the curtain wall, saved space and used the wall for one side of the building. In the center, the well, essential water supply during siege. Sometimes a cistern, rainwater collection. Open space for training, assemblies, markets. The Great Hall, the most important building, the social center of the castle, where the lord held court, judged disputes, feasted, and entertained. Often the largest building in the bailey. Structure rectangular, often quite large, 20-40 meters long, 10-20 meters wide in major castles. High ceilings emphasizing grandeur. Windows more than defensive structures providing light. A central hearth or large fireplaces. Interior features the dais, a raised platform at one end. The high table where the lord, lady, and important guests sat. Elevated above the common folk. Often with a canopy or cloth of estate symbol of authority. The main floor trestle tables and benches for lesser folk. Could be cleared for other uses, entertainment, sleeping. Decoration, tapestries on the walls, insulation and display of wealth. Weapons and armor displayed. Painted decoration in wealthy castles. The screen's passage at the opposite end from the dais. A corridor screened from the hall. Led to the kitchens and service areas. Servants entered through here. Other buildings in the bailey, the chapel, essential religion pervaded medieval life. Ranged from small chambers to elaborate churches. The chaplain resided nearby. Services multiple times daily. The Lord's solar and private chambers. Solar, the Lord's private living space, from Latin sol, sun, often positioned to catch sunlight. Withdrawing room, escape from the public hall. Bed chambers for the Lord and Lady. Sometimes a private chapel oratory. The kitchens, usually separate buildings, fire hazard. Enormous fireplaces and ovens. Multiple rooms, baking, roasting, preparation. Storage for food and utensils. The brewery beer was the everyday drink, safer than water. Brewed on site. The brewer and his assistants worked here. The bakery bread was the staff of life. Large ovens. The baker and helpers. Stables, horses were valuable. War horses cost a fortune. Stalls for riding horses, war horses, draft horses. Tack room, saddles, bridles, etc. The master of the horse and grooms. The smithy, the blacksmith's workshop. Forges for metalwork. Repairs to tools, weapons, horseshoes. The smith and his apprentices. The armory, storage for weapons and armor. Maintenance and repair. Secure location. Storage buildings, granaries, grain storage essential for surviving sieges. Storerooms, salted meat, preserved foods, wine, ale. Stables for livestock, sometimes brought inside during siege. The well, critical infrastructure. Every castle needed water. Wells were dug deep, sometimes through bedrock. Elaborate mechanisms, buckets, pulleys, sometimes donkey-powered pumps. Protected and carefully maintained. Cisterns, rainwater collection. Backup water supply, sometimes in the towers. The curtain walls walking the ramparts. The defensive perimeter, the wall structure height varied widely, 8-15 meters typical for outer walls. High enough to prevent scaling, low enough to build practically. Thickness 2-4 meters, sometimes more. 2 faces of cut stone with rubble fill. Thick enough to withstand battering and support the wall walk. The wall walk or rampart walk, the walkway atop the wall. Wide enough for defenders to move along. Protected by the parapet. Battlements and crenellations, the design in merlons, the solid upright parts. Crenels or embrasures, the gaps between merlons. Defenders stood behind merlons for protection, stepped into crenels to shoot. Machicolations, projecting stonework with openings. Allowed defenders to drop objects on attackers at the wall base. Later development, 14th-15th centuries. Hordes or brattices, wooden galleries projecting from the wall. Temporary structures added when attack threatened. Similar function to machicolations but removable. The towers, flanking towers, purpose, projected from the wall. Allowed defenders to shoot along the wall face, enfilade fire. Covered blind spots. Spacing placed at intervals along the wall. Distance determined by arrow range, typically 30-50 meters apart. Design shapes, round towers became standard, no corners to undermine. Deflected projectiles. Square or rectangular, earlier designs. D-shaped flat back against the wall. Multiple stories, each floor with arrow slits. Connected to the wall walk. Sometimes independent access could be isolated if enemies captured the wall. The interior spaces, chambers within the towers. Storage, guard rooms, sometimes living quarters. Arrow slits provided light and ventilation as well as defense. The keep or donjon, the final refuge. The great tower in earlier castles. The last line of defense. If the outer walls fell, defenders retreated to the keep. Self-contained well, food storage, living quarters. Extremely difficult to capture. The structure as described earlier, multiple floors. Massive walls, minimal openings. Internal stairs, spiral staircases in turrets. The design of spiral stairs, defensive advantage. Clockwise ascending in most castles. A right-handed defender above had free sword arm. An attacker climbing had sword arm blocked by central column. Small, cramped, difficult for attackers to bring weapons to bear. Daily used dark, narrow, uneven steps. Difficult to carry goods up and down. A constant physical challenge for inhabitants. The dungeons below ground. Not always grim prisons, multiple uses, storage the most common use. Workshops, cisterns, and yes, sometimes prisons. Prison cells where prisoners were kept in tower rooms, upper levels for high-status prisoners. In underground chambers for common criminals or prisoners awaiting execution. The oubliette, a pit dungeon, entry from above, existed but was rarer than popular culture suggests. Conditions: dark, cold, damp. Minimal ventilation. Rats and vermin. High-status prisoners might have reasonable conditions, even furnishings. Low-status prisoners suffered terribly. The reality versus myth dungeon originally meant the Great Tower Donjon. The romantic/gothic idea of torture chambers in every castle is exaggerated. Torture existed but was regulated, and not as common as later imagination suggests. Many dungeons in castles today were actually just storage cellars. The latrines, medieval plumbing. Garderobes, the medieval toilet, the designed small rooms built into the thickness of the wall or in a tower projection. A stone or wooden seat with a hole. A shaft or chute that dropped waste down the outside of the wall. Often multiple stories of latrines sharing one chute. The term garderobe originally meant a wardrobe, clothing storage. The ammonia smell of urine was thought to deter moths. Clothing was sometimes stored near latrines for this reason. Privacy minimal. Sometimes a door, often just a curtain or nothing. Medieval attitudes about privacy and bodily functions were different. Hygiene: hand washing, basins of water, wiping cloths, moss, straw. The waste fell into the moat, a cesspit, or simply down the outside wall. The smell: castles could smell quite bad by modern standards. Waste, body odor, smoke, animals, food all contributed. Perfumes, herbs, and incense were used to mask smells. The castle's other spaces. Private chambers: the Lord's chamber, private bedroom and sitting room. More comfortable than the Great Hall. A bed, a valuable possession, chests for clothing and valuables. Possibly a fireplace. Tapestries for warmth and decoration. The lady's chamber, sometimes shared with the Lord, sometimes separate. Her domain, she managed the household from here. Space for embroidery and other women's work. Attendants slept nearby or in the same room. The children's quarters: young children might sleep in their mother's chamber or with nurses. Older children in separate rooms, boys with boys, girls with girls. Less privacy than modern children expect. Service areas: the buttery, storage for beverages, especially ale and wine. The butler managed this, originally the bottler. The pantry, storage for bread and dry goods, from French pain bread. The scullery, where pots and dishes were washed. The dirtiest, lowest status kitchen work. The mews, where hunting birds, falcons, hawks were kept. The falconer tended them. Hunting was a major noble pastime. The kennel, hunting dogs, the huntsman managed them. Dogs were valuable and well cared for. Workshops: carpenters, masons, other craftsmen. Repair and maintenance: castles required constant upkeep. The experience of space. Size and scale impressive but cramped. The Great Hall and towers were grand, but living spaces were small by modern standards. Multiple people shared rooms. Servants slept in halls, stairwells, wherever they could. Vertical living: castles were vertical, multiple stories. Constant stair climbing. Difficult for the elderly or infirm. Goods had to be carried up and down. Temperature: cold in winter, stone holds cold. Fireplaces were inefficient, most heat went up the chimney. Tapestries, rushes on floors, and curtains around beds provided some insulation. People wore layers of wool and fur. Drafts, arrow slits, gaps around doors and shutters, chimneys. Constant air movement. Candles and torches flickered. Hot in summer sometimes, thick stone walls moderated temperature. High-ceilinged halls stayed cooler, but smaller chambers could be stifling. Light daytime windows were small for defense and often had shutters rather than glass. Glass was expensive, only the wealthiest had glass windows. Halls and chambers could be dim even at midday. Nighttime, candles expensive, made from beeswax or tallow. Rush lights, reeds soaked in fat. Torches smoky and dangerous. Fireplaces provided some light. Most people went to bed soon after dark. Sound echoes: stone walls and high ceilings created echoes. Footsteps resounded. Conversations carried. Privacy was acoustic as well as visual, nearly impossible. Constant noise daytime: people working, talking, arguing. Animals: dogs, horses, chickens. Blacksmith's hammer, carpenter's saw. The watchman's calls, church bells marking the hours, smell the reality smoke from fires and torches. Unwashed bodies bathing was infrequent. Food cooking, animals, latrines, spoiled rushes on floors, herbs and flowers were strewn to freshen the air. Perfumes and incense for those who could afford them. The totality of the sensory experience living in a medieval castle was a constant assault on the senses. Cold stone under your feet, the smell of smoke and humanity, the flickering shadows cast by torches, the echoing voices, the drafts that made tapestries sway, the taste of wood smoke in your food. It was a world both grand and squalid, public and yet offering little privacy, communal yet hierarchical. Understanding these physical realities helps us appreciate the daily life that unfolded within these walls. Here we pause in our journey through the medieval castle. We have walked from the outer moat through the formidable gatehouse, explored the bustling bailey with its great hall and outbuildings, climbed the spiral stairs of towers, walked the ramparts, descended to the dungeons, and experienced the sensory reality of stone walls, smoky fires, and echoing chambers. As you drift towards sleep, imagine yourself a resident of this castle, perhaps a young squire learning the arts of war and chivalry, or a lady's maid attending your mistress in her chamber, or a kitchen boy turning the spit, or a watchman on the walls gazing out over the dark countryside. Feel the cold stone beneath your feet, smell the wood smoke and roasting meat, hear the distant sound of the chapel bell calling the household to prayer. When we continue, we will meet the people who inhabited these spaces, from the Lord, who ruled over all, to the lowest scullery servant. We will understand the intricate social hierarchy that structured every interaction, explore the daily routines that shaped life, and witness the great events, feasts, tournaments, marriages, births, and deaths that punctuated the ordinary rhythms of castle life. But for now, rest. The castle is settling for the night, the fires are banked, the watchman takes his post, the household quiets, and within the thick stone walls, hundreds of souls sleep, dream, and prepare for another day in the fortress that is both their protection and their world. A medieval castle was not merely a building, but a microcosm of feudal society, a world with its own rigid hierarchy, complex web of relationships, and carefully defined roles. Everyone from the lord to the lowest scullery boy had their place, their duties, and their expectations. Understanding this social structure is essential to comprehending how castles actually functioned as living communities. The feudal system, the framework of medieval society. The theory: medieval society was organized on the principle of feudalism, a hierarchical system based on land tenure and personal loyalty. The pyramid of power at the top, the king owned all land in theory, granted portions to his vassals in exchange for military service and loyalty. Below the king, the great lords, earls, dukes, counts, held large territories, fiefs from the king, owed military service providing knights for the king's army, had vassals of their own. Below the great lords, the lesser lords, barons, knights, held smaller territories, owed service to their lord, might have their own vassals or simply manage their own lands. At the bottom, the peasants, serfs, villeins, freemen, worked the land, owed labor, rent, and dues to their lord, had few rights but some protections. The relationships: vassalage, a vassal swore an oath of fealty, loyalty to his lord. In exchange, the lord granted a fief land. The vassal owed military service, typically 40 days per year. The lord owed protection and justice. Homage, the ceremony where a vassal became the lord's man. Kneeling, placing hands between the lord's hands, swearing the oath. A sacred, binding relationship. The reality: messier than the theory, vassals might hold land from multiple lords, creating conflicts of loyalty. Some lords were more powerful than their theoretical superiors. Kings struggled to control their vassals. The system varied by region and evolved over time. But the hierarchy was real. Social status was everything. Birth determined one's place with rare exceptions. Moving up the social ladder was nearly impossible. Everyone knew their position relative to everyone else. The lord of the castle, the master. Who was he? Title and status could be a baron, earl, count, duke, or simply a knight with his own castle. Held land from a superior lord or directly from the king. Had vassals of his own or at least controlled peasants. His background: born into the nobility usually. Trained from childhood for leadership and warfare. Inherited his position: primogeniture, the eldest son inherited. His responsibilities, military obligations. Defending the realm, his primary duty was military service to his lord/king. He had to provide a certain number of armed knights based on the size of his fief. He led his men in battle personally. Maintaining the castle was his military base. He had to keep it defensible, repairs, stocking supplies. Maintaining a garrison, soldiers, training, constant practice in arms, sword, lance, riding, hunting, training for war. Tournaments, competitive training. Governing his land's justice, he held manorial courts, judged disputes among his tenants, punished criminals. His word was law within his domain. Administration, managed his estates with the help of officials, collected rents, taxes, and dues, organized labor services, ensured productivity. Protection, his duty to protect his people. Defense against raiders, bandits, rival lords, providing refuge in the castle during danger. His daily life, rising awakened by servants, dressed with assistants, elaborate clothing, attended chapel for morning prayers, morning, breakfast often light, meeting with his steward, bailiff, and other officials, hearing reports, giving orders, making decisions. Midday dinner, the main meal around noon, sitting at the high table in the great hall, business and pleasure mixed. Afternoon, hunting, sport, food, and military training. Hawking, flying falcons, a noble pursuit. Inspecting his lands, training at arms, receiving visitors or messengers. Evening, supper, lighter than dinner. Entertainment, music, storytelling, conversation with guests and family. Prayers before bed. His character, the ideal, brave, honorable, generous, pious, just. Chivalric virtues, courage, courtesy, loyalty. Protector of the weak, especially women and the church. The reality, many were brutal, greedy, and tyrannical. Violence was common, settling disputes through force. Some were cultured and pious, others were thugs. Like any group, great variation in character and ability. The lady of the castle, the mistress. Who was she? Background, daughter of a noble family. Married often, young teen marriages were common for girls. Marriage was political, and economic, love was secondary at best. She brought a dowry, land, money, goods. Her status, second in command after her lord. Authority over the household. Respected if she was the lord's wife. Mistresses or lesser wives had less status. Her responsibilities, managing the household, the enormous task. The castle household could be hundreds of people. She supervised servants, ordered supplies, organized work. This was not light work, it required intelligence, energy, and authority. Specific duties: food management, planning menus, ensuring adequate supplies, supervising the kitchens, preserving food, salting, smoking, pickling. Textile production, spinning, weaving, sewing were constant. Clothing for the entire household, linens, tapestries, banners. She oversaw this work, often doing fine embroidery herself. Healthcare, she was often the castle's primary healer. Knowledge of herbal remedies, caring for the sick and injured. Childbirth assistance for herself and others. Hospitality, welcoming guests. Organizing feasts and entertainment. Managing the chambers for visitors. Financial management, keeping household accounts. Buying supplies. Managing the budget the Lord provided. Religious duties, attending chapel services. Supervising religious education of children. Charity to the poor. Acting as regent when the Lord was absent, he might be away for months or years. War, crusades, serving the king. She held authority in his stead. Made decisions, dispensed justice, managed the estates. Some became formidable rulers. Alinor of Aquitaine managed vast territories. Countess of Buchan defended her castle against siege. Many unnamed women who proved highly capable administrators. Her daily life: morning, rising, dressing with attendants. Chapel for morning prayers. Breaking fast, light meal. Midday, overseeing household work. Meeting with servants and officials. Needlework or other crafts, productive and expected. Dinner in the great hall. Afternoon, more household management. Visiting the sick. Teaching children or supervising their education. Sometimes riding or hawking, noble pursuits. Evening, supper. Entertainment. Conversation, prayers, and bed. Her chambers, the solar or lady's bower, her private space. More comfortable than public areas, where she worked, relaxed, and slept. Attended by her ladies in waiting. Her attendants, noblewomen, companions, and assistants. Servants, personal maids. Rarely alone. Her education and culture, literacy. Many noblewomen could read at least in vernacular languages. Some knew Latin, the language of the church, and learning. They read religious texts, romances, poetry. Accomplishments: embroidery, music, dancing. knowledge of heraldry coats of arms. Languages. French was the language of the nobility in England. Some were highly educated and cultured. Her power and limitations. Authority significant within her domain, the household. Respect from servants and even knights. Could issue orders and expect obedience. Limitations. Ultimately subject to her husband. Few legal rights. Property belonged to her husband. Her role was supportive, not independent. Expected to be chaste, obedient, and pious. Widowhood. If her husband died, she might gain independence. Controlled her dower portion of her husband's estate for her support. Might remarry, often pressured to. Some widows wielded significant power. The knights, warriors, and nobles. Who were they? Status. The warrior elite could be landholders, landed knights with their own estates, or household knights living in a lord's castle. Younger sons of nobles who didn't inherit land often became knights. Training. Childhood. Ages 7-14, sent to another lord's castle as a page. Learned manners, basic literacy, religion. Began physical training, riding, mock combat. Served at table, attended the lord. Adolescence. Ages 14-21, became a squire to a knight. Intensive military training, sword, lance, armor, horseback combat. Cared for his knight's armor, weapons, and horses. Accompanied his knight to battle and tournaments. Knighthood. Age 21 or later, dubbed a knight in a ceremony. Could be simple or elaborate, sometimes after proving himself in battle. The accolade, a blow with the flat of a sword on the shoulder. Oath to uphold chivalric values. The equipment. Armor, evolved from mail chainmail interlocking metal rings to plate armor sheets of metal. Extremely expensive. A full suit could cost a fortune. Heavy. 2025 kag for plate armor, but well balanced. Required a squire's help to put on. Weapons. Sword, the knight's primary weapon, symbol of his status. Lance for mounted charges. Mace, axe, warhammer for smashing armor. Dagger, backup weapon, close combat. Horse, the destress warhorse, was enormously valuable, trained for combat. Larger, stronger than riding horses. A knight might own multiple horses for war, hunting, traveling. Their role in the castle. Garrison. Household. Knights lived in the castle. Provided security. Trained constantly. 8. In the great hall below the lord but above common soldiers. Administration. Some knights held administrative positions. Steward, marshal, constable. Combined military and civil duties. Their daily life. Morning training, sword practice, riding, mock combat. Attending to armor and weapons. Chapel. Religion was important. Midday dinner in the great hall. Socializing. Afternoon. More training, hunting, both sport and training. Tournaments when held. Evening supper, entertainment. Gambling, dice, chess, popular pastimes. Chivalry. The knightly code, the ideal. Courage in battle. Loyalty to lord and comrades. Protection of the weak. Women, children, clergy, peasants. Courtesy and refined behavior. Piety and religious devotion. Honor and truthfulness. The reality. Many knights were brutal and self-interested. Chivalry was often limited to one's social equals. Peasants and enemies were treated harshly. But the ideal influenced behavior and culture. Some knights genuinely tried to live up to the code. The squires and pages. Knights in training. Pages. Ages 7-14, their duties: serving at table, running errands, learning manners and basic education. Beginning physical training. Their life lived in the castle, not with their families. Slept in dormitories or halls. Supervised by the lord, lady, and chaplain. Harsh discipline. Squires. Ages 14-21, their duties: caring for their knight's equipment, accompanying their knight, fighting in battle though not as full knights. Continuing education. Their life. More responsibility than pages. Greater freedom. Anticipation of eventual knighthood. Some never became knights, couldn't afford it, or their lord didn't dub them. The clergy. Priests and chaplains. The chaplain. His role: the castle's resident priest. Conducted religious services. Administered sacraments: baptism, marriage, last rites. Heard confessions. Provided spiritual guidance. His status: educated, could read and write Latin. Respected. Part of the household. 8. In the hall, had a chamber. Other duties: often the castle's scribe, writing letters, keeping records. Sometimes the teacher, educating children. Medical knowledge. Monasteries were centers of medical learning. His daily life: early rising for prayers, morning mass, attending to pastoral duties, study and reading. Afternoon prayers and services, evening prayers. Compline. The officials running the castle. The steward or seneschal, the lord's right hand, managed the entire estate. Supervised other officials. kept accounts, organized labor and resources, sometimes held manorial courts in the lord's absence. His status, high position, great responsibility. Often a knight or nobleman, trusted implicitly by the lord. The martial master of the horses managed the stables, cared for the lord's horses, organized hunts, sometimes military duties marshalling troops. The constable military commander commanded the garrison, organized defense, sometimes also served as governor of the castle in the lord's absence. The chamberlain managing private chambers oversaw the lord's personal chambers, managed the lord's wardrobe and personal effects. Sometimes financial duties managing the treasury. The butler, not a modern butler, managed the wine and ale, oversaw the buttery. Important position, wine was valuable. The pantler managed the pantry, bread and dry goods. The ewer provided water for washing hands, attended to hygiene needs. The almonar distributed alms, charity to the poor, fulfilled the lord's religious duty of charity. The servants, the workers. The upper servants, these had specific skills and some status. The cook, highly skilled, managed the kitchens, created elaborate dishes, commanded kitchen staff. The baker made bread daily, managed the ovens. The brewer made ale and beer. Essential work, everyone drank ale. The huntsman managed the hunt, cared for hunting dogs, tracked game. The falconer cared for hunting birds, trained falcons and hawks. Noble sport required expertise. The armorer maintained weapons and armor, skilled craftsman. The carpenter, mason, smith, constant repairs needed. Skilled trades. Some were permanent residents, some hired for projects. The lower servants, the grooms, cared for horses, mucked stables, fed and groomed animals. The porters guarded gates, carried goods, heavy labor. The scullions, kitchen workers, washing pots, hauling water. Dirty, low-status work. The laundresses, washing clothing and linens. Hard, constant work, everything was hand-washed. The maids, cleaning, serving the lady and other women, varied duties. The boys and girls, children, did menial work, fetching, carrying, running errands, learning trades or service. Their lifelong hours, work from dawn to dusk or later. Little rest, physically demanding. Hierarchy among servants. Upper servants had authority over lower. Strict pecking order. Everyone knew their place. Compensation, wages usually modest. Food and lodging the main benefit. Clothing sometimes provided by the lord. Security, better than being a landless peasant. Conditions, slept in halls, stairwells, anywhere available. Little privacy. Hard work but better than starving. Opportunities, loyal, capable servants could advance. Some became officials. Rare but possible. The soldiers, the garrison. The men at arms, professional soldiers, not knights but trained fighters. Equipped with armor and weapons less elaborate than knights. Paid wages. Lived in the castle barracks. Their duties, guard duty, watching gates, walls, towers. Training. Maintaining order. Fighting when war came. Their life, boring routine punctuated by danger. Discipline and drills. Camaraderie. Drinking, gambling, occasional brawls. Archers, specialized fighters, longbowmen in England especially. Crossbowmen, skilled, slower to reload but powerful. Highly valued, archery could devastate enemy formations. Training, constant practice. Archery was a skill requiring years to master. The watch, day and night, soldiers rotated through watch duty, scanning for threats, calling the hours. Lonely, cold, tedious. The peasants, those outside the walls. Who were they? Though most peasants lived outside the castle, they were part of the lord's domain. Status, serfs, unfree, bound to the land, couldn't leave without permission. Villeins, similar to serfs. Freemen had more rights, could own land, but still owed dues and services. Their relationship to the castle, obligations, labor, services, working the lord's fields, rents and dues paid in kind, grain, livestock, etc. Taxes and fees for using the lord's mill, oven, etc. Protection in times of danger. They could seek refuge in the castle. The bailey might accommodate them and their livestock. The lord's duty was to protect them. Their presence in the castle, bringing rents and dues. Working on castle projects, building, repairs. Selling goods at markets, seeking justice at the lord's court. The hierarchy in action, deference and respect, how people interacted at lower ranks deferred to higher. Bowing, kneeling, removing hats. Specific forms of address, my lord, my lady, sir. Waiting for superiors to speak first. Seating at meals, strict order, the lord and lady at the high table, knights and officials below them, servants at the lowest tables or standing. Quality of food decreased with status. This was not resented, it was the natural order. Clothing visible markers of status. Lords wore fine fabric, silk, velvet, fur. Servants wore wool and linen. Sumptuary laws sometimes regulated who could wear what. Space and privacy. The lord had private chambers. Servants had almost no privacy. Physical proximity reflected status. Punishment and discipline. The lord's authority, he could punish anyone in his household. Flogging, imprisonment, fines, severe crimes, hanging, mutilation, cutting off hands or ears. His power was nearly absolute. Justice. The lord held courts. Disputes were settled. Land, debts, crimes. Trial by ordeal or combat, declining by the late Middle Ages. The lord's word was law. The complexity of relationships, not just hierarchy. Personal relationships mattered. Loyalty and affection. The lord's favor could elevate a servant. Trust and competence were valued. Mutual obligations. The lord owed protection and justice. Servants owed labor and loyalty. This was understood as reciprocal even if unequal. The household as community. Despite hierarchy, the castle was a community. Shared meals, prayers, work. Everyone depended on everyone else. A sense of collective identity. Women in the hierarchy complicated status. A noblewoman outranked a male servant, but was subject to her husband or father. Women had roles: household management, religious devotion, childbearing, but were excluded from warfare and formal governance mostly. Female servants, maids, laundresses, cooks, nurses. Lower status than male servants of the same job. Vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. Some achieved positions of trust and responsibility. The reality of life in the hierarchy. Living in the medieval castle hierarchy meant knowing your place and accepting it as divinely ordained. For the lord and lady, it meant power and responsibility, wealth and the expectation of leadership, deference from inferiors and the duty to protect them. For the knights, it meant honor and the pride of martial prowess, subordination to the lord and authority over common soldiers. For the servants, it meant security and sustenance, but also hard work, long hours, and little control over one's life. For everyone, it meant living in a tightly structured world, where deviation from one's role was not just improper but a violation of cosmic order. The medieval castle day was structured by the rhythms of work, prayer, and meals. Life followed predictable patterns, shaped by the sun's movement, the church's liturgical hours, and the seasons. Understanding a typical day reveals the texture of lived experience within the fortress walls. The hours of the day marking time. Medieval timekeeping, no clocks for most of the period. Mechanical clocks appeared in the late Middle Ages, 14th century. Before that, time was measured by the sun and by church bells. The canonical hours. The church divided the day into 8 periods for prayer. These structured everyone's day. Matins, middle of the night around 2-3 a.m. Lauds, dawn. Prime, early morning around 6 a.m. Terce, mid-morning around 9 a.m. Sext, noon. None, mid-afternoon around 3 p.m. Vespers, evening. Compline, before bed. Church bells rang to call the faithful to prayer. Everyone heard them and oriented their day accordingly. The castle chapel participated in this rhythm. Dawn, the castle awakens. The first stirrings, the servants rising earliest, kitchen staff up before dawn to light fires, start baking bread. Grooms feeding and watering horses. Porters opening the gates at first light. Maids lighting fires in chambers, preparing for the household to wake. The sounds of morning, roosters crowing, chickens were kept in the bailey. The clatter of pots in the kitchen. Servants calling to each other. The crackle of fires being lit. The splash of water being drawn from the well. The lord and lady rising at dawn or slightly after, waking servants entering the chamber. Opening shutters if it's light. Lighting candles if it's still dim. Laying out clothing. Dressing, a process requiring assistance especially for the lady. Multiple layers, linen undergarments, gowns, tunics, robes. The lord's clothing simpler but still requiring help with fastenings. Morning ablutions, washing hands and face in a basin of water brought by servants. Combing hair. No bathing that was infrequent, perhaps monthly or less. Morning prayers. Shortly after rising, the household gathers in the chapel. The chaplain conducts morning prayers. Everyone expected to attend from the Lord to the lowliest servant. Latin prayers and hymns. Brief, perhaps 15-30 minutes. Breaking the fast. Breakfast, often light or non-existent. The term breakfast literally meant breaking the night's fast. Many people didn't eat breakfast. The Lord might have bread and ale. Servants grabbed something while working. The morning work and administration. The Lord's morning meeting with officials. The steward reports accounts, state matters. The marshal, constable, and others report. Decisions made, orders given. Holding court, hearing disputes among tenants. Dispensing justice. Important for maintaining authority and order. Inspecting the castle and lands, walking the walls, checking defenses. Visiting stables, storerooms. Ensuring everything is in order. Correspondence, dictating letters to the chaplain or a scribe. Receiving messages. Maintaining relationships with other lords, the king, etc. The ladies' morning, managing the household, meeting with the chief servants, cook, butler, chamberlain's staff. Planning meals for the day. Checking supplies, food, candles, firewood, etc. Assigning tasks to servants. Overseeing work, spinning, weaving, sewing, ongoing. She might do fine embroidery. Supervising the women's work. Charity, distributing alms to the poor who gathered at the gate. Tending to the sick in the castle or nearby. The knight's morning, training, sword practice solo or with partners. Tilting at the quintain, a rotating target for lance practice. Wrestling, riding. Maintaining combat readiness. Caring for equipment, squires did most of this, but knights supervised. Armor needed constant cleaning, rust was a constant threat. Sharpening weapons. The servants' morning, constant activity, kitchen. Preparing dinner, the main meal, served around noon. Grooms mucking stables, grooming horses. Maids cleaning chambers, making beds, emptying chamber pots. Scullions washing pots from breakfast such as it was. Laundresses washing linens, boiling, beating, rinsing, hard work. Midday dinner, the main meal. The great event of the day, dinner was served around noon and was the primary meal preparation. The kitchen organized chaos, multiple fires roaring. Roasting meat on spits turned by boys. Boiling pots of stew or pottage. Baking pies and pastries. The cook directing everything, tasting, adjusting. The great hall servants setting up trestle tables, laying out bread trenchers, thick slices of stale bread serving as plates. Setting out cups, knives, diners brought their own knives, forks were rare. Fresh rushes on the floor covered with herbs for scent. The meal begins, washing hands before eating. Everyone washed their hands, eating with hands was the norm. Servants brought basins of water, towels. This was ritual as well as hygienic. Seating the lord and lady at the high table on the dais. Important guests, the chaplain, high-ranking officials with them. Knights and lesser officials at tables below. Servants at the lowest tables or standing. The procession of dishes, servers, young men. Sometimes squires brought dishes from the kitchen, presented them to the lord. First he chose portions, then served the high table, then the lower tables. The food for the high table, roasted meat, beef, pork, venison, birds. Fish on fast days, and there were many. Rich sauces spiced with imported spices, pepper, cinnamon, ginger. White bread, fine wheat flour. Wine for the lord and lady, important guests. For lower tables, simpler fare, pottage, a thick vegetable and grain stew. Coarser bread, rye or barley. Ale, the common drink. Less meat. Etiquette, table manners, rules were complex. Don't blow your nose on the tablecloth. Don't pick your teeth with your knife. Don't wipe greasy hands on your clothing, use the tablecloth or bread. Share politely with your table companion, meals were communal. Don't slurp or talk with your mouth full. Conversation, the lord might address the hall. Announcements, news, proclamations. Conversation at the high table, politics, gossip, estate matters. Lower tables, lighter talk, jokes, banter. Entertainment, sometimes musicians playing harp, lute, pipe, and tabor. A minstrel or troubadour singing. A jongleur, juggler, or acrobat performing. Not every meal but special occasions. Grace before the meal, the chaplain said grace. After prayers of thanks. Religion infused everything. Duration, dinner could last 1-2 hours or more on feast days. Not rushed. The afternoon work continues. The lord's afternoon, outdoor activities, hunting very common, the most popular noble pastime. Both sport and training for war. Chasing deer, boar, hares. Riding, tracking, using dogs and weapons. Could last hours. Hawking, flying falcons or hawks to catch birds. More refined than hunting, considered elegant. The type of bird indicated status, falcon for kings, peregrine for earls, etc. Inspecting lands, riding out to see his fields, forests, villages. Checking on peasants' work. Asserting his presence and authority. Or indoor activities, administration, more meetings. Reading reports if he could read, or having them read to him. planning military construction, etc. Leisure chess very popular among nobles. Dice and gambling. Conversation. The lady's afternoon household management continues, supervising afternoon work, planning the evening meal supper. Her leisure, needlework, not just for utility but an art. Embroidery, tapestry work, creating beautiful textiles. Reading religious texts, psalters, books of hours, romances, stories of knights and courtly love. Poetry. Music, playing an instrument, harp, lute. Singing, socializing with her ladies in waiting. Conversation, games, walking in the garden if the castle had one. The afternoon for others, nights more training or hunting with the Lord. Caring for equipment. Leisure games, conversation, gambling. Servants, continuous work. Preparing supper lighter than dinner. Cleaning up from dinner. Ongoing chores, always something to do. Children, pages and squires, training and lessons. Noble children, education, reading, writing, music, manners. Servants, children, playing when not working, learning trades. Evening supper and compline. Supper, as darkness falls, a lighter meal similar to dinner but simpler and shorter. Bread, cheese, ale, perhaps leftover meat from dinner, fish or eggs. The same ritual, washing hands. Seating by rank. Serving from the kitchen. Conversation. Entertainment, more common in the evening, stories and songs, minstrels and storytellers. Epic, Song of Roland, tales of King Arthur, romances and adventures. News from elsewhere, travelers brought information. Music, instruments and singing. Dancing on festive occasions. Conversation by the fire. Discussing the day's events, politics, gossip, family matters. Compline, the final prayer of the day, gathering in the chapel, the household assembled. The chaplain led prayers. Hymns sung. Prayers for protection through the night. Bedtime, preparing for sleep, the lord and lady servants help them undress. Nightclothes, linen shifts. Climbing into bed, a substantial piece of furniture with curtains for privacy and warmth. Their chamber, the bed, often shared, privacy was rare. A brazier or fireplace, warmth. A chamber pot for nighttime needs. Perhaps a dog or two for warmth and company. The household servants sleeping wherever they could, halls, kitchens, stables, pallets or simply cloaks on the floor. The great hall might house many sleepers. Snoring, rustling, the occasional cry of a nightmare. The watch guards on duty, soldiers, rotated through the night watch, walking the walls, calling the hours, all's well, watching for threats, raiders, fire. A cold, boring duty, especially in winter. Bundled in cloaks. Staying alert, falling asleep on watch was punishable. The night darkness, no streetlights, only the moon and stars. Inside, a few candles or rushlights, expensive to burn all night. The fires banked, covered to burn slowly. Sounds, the wind, owls and other night birds, the watchman's call. Sleepers snoring, shifting, the occasional crackle of a fire. Security gates locked and barred, portcullis down, the castle sealed against the night. Waking in the night for prayers, the most devout attended matins, the midnight prayer. The bell rang, few went. For necessities, using chamber pots or visiting the garderobe. A cold, dark walk. Nightmares and fears, medieval people believed in supernatural dangers. Demons, ghosts, witches. Prayers for protection. The sign of the cross. Holy water sprinkled. The cycle begins again, dawn would come, and the entire routine repeated day after day, season after season, year after year. The rhythms were comforting and predictable, providing structure and meaning. Life in the castle was not one of leisure except for the highest nobles, and even they had duties but of constant work, constant vigilance, and constant awareness of one's place in the great hierarchy of being. Here we pause in our journey through the daily life of the medieval castle. We have met the lord and lady, the knights and squires, the chaplain and servants, understanding their roles and relationships. We have followed the day from dawn to darkness, from morning prayers to evening entertainment, from the bustle of dinner to the quiet of the night watch. As you drift towards sleep, imagine yourself a member of this household, perhaps a squire learning your future role, or a lady's maid attending your mistress, or a man-at-arms standing watch on a cold night, or a kitchen boy turning a spit by the roaring fire. Feel the weight of your place in the hierarchy, the comfort of routine, the security of thick walls, and the community of hundreds of souls living, working, and sleeping within the fortress. When we continue, we will explore the great feast, the pinnacle of medieval hospitality, where abundance, display, and social bonding came together in hours of eating, drinking, and entertainment. We will also descend below stairs to understand the servants' world in greater detail, seeing the hard work that made the Lord's lives possible. But for now, rest. The castle sleeps, the fires burn low, the watchman calls the hour, and within the stone walls, everyone from the lord in his curtained bed to the scullion on the kitchen floor dreams their dreams and awaits the dawn. The medieval feast was far more than a meal. It was theater, politics, display of wealth, social bonding, and entertainment all combined into one elaborate event. Great feasts marked important occasions, religious festivals like Christmas and Easter, weddings, the knighting of the Lord's Son, the visit of an important guest, victories in battle, or simply the Lord's desire to demonstrate his generosity and power. Understanding the feast reveals medieval values of hospitality, hierarchy, abundance, and spectacle. Preparing for the feast days of work. The announcement word spreads days or weeks in advance. The Lord announces a feast. Invitations sent to neighbors, vassals, and honored guests. The household mobilizes for preparation. The lady's role, she orchestrates the entire event. Planning menus, organizing servants, arranging accommodations. An enormous undertaking requiring intelligence and experience. Provisioning food acquisition from the Lord's estates, grain, livestock, vegetables, fruits from the demesne Lord's own lands, fish from ponds and rivers, game from forests, deer, boar, rabbits, birds, honey from beehives, from peasants' rents and dues often paid in kind, chickens, eggs, cheese, etc. Special requisitions for the feast. Purchased goods, spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves, ginger, saffron, expensive imports from the East, wine from France, Germany, or local vineyards, fine white bread flour, specialty items, dates, figs, almonds, sugar, quantities for a major feast, hundreds of loaves of bread, dozens of animals, oxen, pigs, sheep, chickens, geese, barrels of ale and wine, pounds of spices, everything consumed fresh, no refrigeration, preservation was salting, smoking, or pickling. Kitchen preparation the days before, baking enormous quantities of bread, white bread for the high table, darker bread for lower tables. Pies, meat pies, fruit pies, pastries and sweet confections. Butchering animals slaughtered and dressed, meat hung, brief aging. Portions allocated to different dishes. Preparation work, vegetables chopped, sauces prepared, complex recipes with many ingredients. Stocks made, simmering bones and vegetables for broths. Special dishes, elaborate creations requiring days of work. Subtleties, decorative food sculptures, gilding, coating with gold leaf, yes, edible gold for display. The hall preparation, cleaning and decorating fresh rushes. The floor covered with new rushes, reeds or grasses. Herbs scattered among them, lavender, mint, rosemary for pleasant scent. Tapestries hung on walls, insulation and decoration. The finest tapestries brought out for display. Banners and heraldry, the Lord's coat of arms displayed prominently. Guests' heraldry honored. Tables and seating, the high table on the dais, raised platform, covered with fine linen cloths. The Lord's chair more elaborate than others, possibly with a canopy. Places for the lady, honored guests, the chaplain. Lower tables, trestle tables set up in rows. Benches for seating. The hall could accommodate hundreds. Place settings, trenchers, thick slices of stale bread serving as plates. Absorbed juices and could be eaten or given to the poor afterward. Shared cups and bowls, diners shared 2 to a cup, communal serving bowls. Only the highest nobles had individual settings. Knives, diners brought their own knives, used for cutting meat and spearing food. Spoons for soups and pottages, sometimes shared. Forks, extremely rare forks, didn't become common until the Renaissance. Eating with hands was normal and accepted. Salt cellars, elaborate containers for salt. Position indicated status, above the salt or below the salt. Salt was valuable, used for preservation and seasoning. The day of the feast from morning to night. Final preparations, the kitchen controlled chaos, hours of cooking, multiple fires blazing. Spits turning with roasting meats, boys turning them, sweating in the heat. Pots bubbling with stews and sauces. Ovens producing bread and pies. The cook directing, tasting, adjusting, shouting orders. The hierarchy in action, the master cook commanded. Undercooks managed specific tasks. Scullions did menial work, hauling water, washing pots, turning spits. Discipline was strict, a slap or worse for mistakes. Timing, everything had to be ready simultaneously. A logistical challenge, no timers or thermometers, only experience. The arrival of guests welcoming the Lord and Lady greet important guests at the gate. Lesser guests welcomed by officials. Horses taken to stables, baggage to chambers. Accommodations chambers assigned by status. Important guests private chambers. Lesser guests shared rooms. Lowest status sleeping in the hall with the household. Refreshment wine or ale offered. Light food bread, cheese, fruit. Time to wash and change for the feast. The procession to the hall ceremony trumpets or horns announce the feast guests gather. The chaplain leads a prayer. The Lord and Lady enter in procession. Everyone stands until they are seated. Seating guests shown to their place's status determines proximity to the Lord. Protocol strictly observed. Insults could occur if someone seated improperly. The feast begins course after course. The blessing grace before meals the chaplain or a monk says a lengthy Latin blessing. Everyone bows heads. A sacred moment, even a feast was religious. The first course servers enter the procession from the kitchen servants carrying dishes, sometimes musicians accompanying, presenting dishes with ceremony. The first dishes typical first course varied by region and season pottage thick soup with vegetables, grains, sometimes meat, roasted birds peacocks, swans, herons served in their feathers for display, fish if a fast day or Friday, meat pies, fermentia wheat porridge with milk and spices. Serving order the Lord and high table served first. The Lord chose portions, the rest distributed. Lower tables served afterward. Some dishes never reached the lowest tables, prestige foods stayed at the top. Eating using hands, most food eaten with hands. Pieces of meat torn or cut with personal knife. Dipped in sauces. Bread trencher soaked up juices. Shared dishes taking from communal bowls. Offering choice pieces to neighbors' courtesy. Not taking too much greed was condemned. Drinking ale and wine flowing servants constantly refilling cups. Toasts to the Lord to honored guests to the king. Drinking was communal and expected. Getting drunk was not unusual, though excess was theoretically frowned upon. The second course and third, fourth, sometimes more dishes appear, roasted meats, whole roasted pigs, lambs, sides of beef. Venison deer a prestige meat, only nobles could hunt deer. Roasted fowl chickens, geese, ducks, game birds. Elaborate presentations the peacock roasted then sewn back into its feathers with the tail spread, carried in with ceremony. Spectacular but not necessarily delicious peacock is tough and dry. The swan similarly presented. Sometimes gilded covered in gold leaf. Boar's head served whole with an apple in its mouth, symbol of plenty and the Lord's prowess as a hunter. Castles and ships pastry construction subtleties shaped like castles, ships animals. Edible but mainly for display. Showed the cook's skill and the Lord's wealth. Between courses entertainment and tremets literally between servings musicians minstrels playing harp, lute, viol, pipe and tabor. Singers performing ballads and romances. Jongleurs jugglers, acrobats tumbling, juggling, tricks. Comic relief. Storytellers reciting epics or romances. The Song of Roland Arthurian tales, local legends. The fool or jester making jokes often crude. Mocking even the Lord fools had license to speak freely. Physical comedy. Removing courses between courses servants cleared used trenchers and dishes. Hands washed servants brought basins and towels. A pause before the next onslaught. Later courses sweets and spices, the dessert course sweet dishes fruits fresh if in season, preserved otherwise figs dates, apples, pears, fruit pies and tarts, custards and blancmange a sweet almond pudding, wafers and sweet pastries, comfits sugar-coated nuts and seeds, spiced wine hippocras wine spiced with cinnamon, ginger, cloves, sweetened with honey or sugar, served in the final course, expensive and prestigious, cheese and nuts various cheeses, walnuts, almonds, wine or ale. The final blessing grace after meals the chaplain gives thanks. Everyone stands. Prayers for the Lord, the guests, the king, the departed. The duration hours of feasting a great feast could last 3-6 hours or more. Multiple courses with entertainment between. Not rushed, this was a social event. The amount of food, staggering quantities hundreds of pounds of meat. Dozens of birds, countless loaves of bread, barrels of ale and wine. Guests were expected to eat and drink liberally. Excess and waste more food than could be consumed. Leftovers given to servants and the poor gathered at the gates. Waste was a display of wealth. We have so much we can afford to waste. After the feast entertainment continues. Clearing the hall servants' work tables dismantled or pushed aside. The floor cleared. fresh rushes if needed. The entertainment, music and dancing, court dances, formal dances, carols, basses dances, partners holding hands walking in patterns, stately and dignified. Songs, courtly love songs, drinking songs, sometimes bawdy songs as the night wore on and wine flowed. Storytelling, minstrels and troubadours, epic tales, chansons, digest songs of deeds. Romances, tales of knights and ladies. Historical stories, real or legendary. The audience gathered around, listening raptly. Oral culture stories were primary entertainment. Stories could last hours. Games and contests, riddles and word games popular among the educated. Wit and cleverness valued. Chess, the noble game. Matches between skilled players. Onlookers watching and commenting. Dice and gambling common, though the church disapproved. Gambling on games of chance. Sometimes large sums wagered. Physical contests, sometimes wrestling matches. Arm wrestling. Contests of strength. Conversation, politics and news, discussing events, wars, royal doings, local affairs. Forging alliances, negotiating marriages. Important business conducted informally. Gossip, who was marrying whom. Scandals and rumors. Entertainment and information mixed. Courtship, young people, feasts were opportunities for young nobles to meet. Flirting within the bounds of propriety. Arranged marriages might be discussed. Courtly love, the idealized romance of knights and ladies. Expressed through poetry and song, often more fantasy than reality. Real marriages were practical arrangements. The night wears on, the lord and lady retire eventually. The lord and lady withdraw to their chambers. Servants attend them. But the celebration might continue. The rest continue. Lesser nobles and servants continue celebrating. Drinking, singing, perhaps rowdiness. The night might go very late. Sleeping arrangements, guests shown to their chambers if important. Sharing beds, common privacy was rare. Lesser guests sleeping in the hall. Servants collapsing wherever they can after cleaning up. Exhausted from days of preparation and work. The morning after, hangovers and exhaustion, medieval people drank heavily at feasts. The morning after was difficult. Work resumed, though perhaps slowly. Departing guests, farewells. Gifts exchanged, the lord giving gifts to important guests. Thanks and compliments. Invitations to return. Cleaning up, servants' work, massive cleanup, dishes, pots, hall. Could take days, the least glamorous part of the feast. The meaning of the feast, why feast? Hospitality as duty, the lord was expected to be generous. Feasts demonstrated wealth and power. Failing to feast suggested weakness or poverty. Building alliances, feasts brought people together. Relationships were forged and maintained. Political and social bonds strengthened. Display of status, the quality and quantity of food, the entertainment, the decorations. All proclaimed the lord's position. Competition with other lords. Religious duty, Christian charity, feeding others. Celebrating holy days. Giving thanks to God for abundance. Social cohesion, the feast brought the household together. Even servants participated, though at lower tables. A sense of community and shared celebration. The economic impact, enormous expense, spices, wine, fine ingredients, very costly. Entertainment, paying minstrels, jesters, gifts to guests. Could bankrupt lesser lords if they overreached, stimulating the economy, buying goods from merchants. Employing entertainers and craftsmen. Redistributing wealth, leftovers to the poor. Seasonal feasts, the calendar of celebration. Christmas, December 25 and the 12 days, following the greatest feast celebrating Christ's birth. The Yule log, a massive log burned in the great hall fireplace. Wassailing, drinking spiced ale and toasting. Mumming and disguises, dressing up, performing skits. The lord of misrule, a servant elevated to mock lordship for the celebration. Social hierarchy temporarily inverted. Special foods, boar's head, traditional Christmas dish. Plum pudding, mince pies. Spiced wine and ale. Easter, variable date, spring, celebrating the resurrection, the most important Christian holiday. Breaking the Lenten fast, 40 days of restricted diet before Easter. Lamb, symbolic of Christ, the Lamb of God. Eggs, symbol of rebirth. Rich foods after weeks of abstinence. Pentecost, Whitsunday, 7 weeks after Easter, another major feast, celebrating the Holy Spirit descending on the apostles. Feasting and religious observance. Harvest festivals, late summer/autumn, celebrating the harvest. Alamas, August 1, loaf mass, blessing the first bread from new grain. Michaelmas, September 29, Thanksgiving for a successful harvest. Anxiety if the harvest was poor, winter survival depended on it. Saints' days, local and universal saints. Each region and castle might celebrate particular saints. St. George, April 23, especially in England. St. Michael, September 29. Local patron saints. Religious observance and feasting combined. Personal celebrations, weddings, enormous feasts. Days of celebration, cementing family alliances. Births, especially of heirs, celebrating the birth of a son, ensuring succession. Knightings when a young man was dubbed a knight. A major rite of passage. Victories after successful battles or military campaigns. Celebrating triumph, honoring warriors. The dark side of feasting, excess and gluttony. The church preached moderation, but feasts celebrated excess. Tension between religious ideals and social practice. Exclusion feasts highlighted hierarchy. The poor outside the gates watched the wealthy feast inside. Leftovers were charity but also a reminder of disparity. Waste, enormous waste while many starved. Modern sensibilities are troubled. Medieval people saw it differently. Display of God's abundance, obligation to share. The violence feasts sometimes led to drunken brawls. Insults given and taken. Violence erupting, feuds beginning over seating, perceived slights. The feast as spectacle. Medieval feasts were not just about eating, but about creating a spectacle, a theatrical performance, where the Lord played the generous host. The guests played their roles of appreciation and deference. The food was scenery and prop, and the entire event communicated messages about power, wealth, piety, and social order. Understanding the feast helps us see medieval culture's values, the importance of display, the centrality of hospitality, the intertwining of religion and daily life, and the constant reinforcement of hierarchy, even in moments of celebration. While lords and ladies lived in relative comfort and knights trained for glory, the vast majority of people in the castle were servants whose hard work made that life possible. Understanding their world, their work, their living conditions, their relationships, and their rare moments of leisure reveals the foundation upon which the castle's grandeur rested. The servant hierarchy, even among the lowly. Not all servants were equal. Just as the nobility had ranks, so did servants. Upper servants, skilled positions requiring training. Some authority over others. Better conditions and pay. Examples: the master cook, the butler, the chamberlain's assistants, the marshal's staff. Middle servants, specialized but less prestigious, specific tasks. Examples: grooms, laundresses, bakers, brewers. Lower servants, unskilled labor, the dirtiest, hardest work, little status. Examples: scullions, stable boys, chambermaids. The relationship between ranks: upper servants commanded lower servants. Respect and obedience expected. Advancement possible: a scullion could become an undercook, eventually a cook. Discipline: harsh beatings for mistakes or insubordinance. The kitchen staff, feeding the castle. The master cook, a position of responsibility, managed the entire kitchen operation. Planned menus in consultation with the lady or steward. Supervised all kitchen workers. Tasted and adjusted dishes. Accountable for food quality and budget. His background, trained through apprenticeship, years of learning. Might have worked in multiple kitchens. Skill and experience highly valued. His authority, absolute in his domain, the kitchen. Could strike lazy or incompetent workers. Respected by the household. Undercooks, specialized roles: roast cook, managing the spits and roasting. Sauce cook, preparing complex sauces. Pastry cook, pies, pastries, bread, each managing their specific tasks. The scullions, the lowest kitchen workers, their work: washing endless pots, cauldrons, bowls, utensils, hot, greasy water, hands rubbed raw, hours of tedious labor, hauling water from the well, heavy buckets, countless trips. Firewood, keeping the fires burning, required enormous quantities. Waste disposal: ashes, food scraps. Turning spits, sitting or standing by the roaring fire, turning the spit for hours so meat roasted evenly. Sweating, bored, occasionally burned. Conditions: the kitchen was hot, fires burning all day. Smoky ventilation was poor. Loud shouting, clattering pots. The cook's temper, shouting, sometimes striking workers. Their status: lowest in the kitchen hierarchy. Often children or young teenagers, learning the trade, hoping to advance. Or simply surviving, no other options. The bakers, the daily grind, baking bread, the staple food. Everyone ate bread at every meal. Enormous quantities needed. Baking started before dawn, ovens took hours to heat. The process mixing dough, flour, water, yeast or sourdough starter, salt, needing hard physical work. Rising, waiting the time depends on temperature. Shaping loaves, baking in the ovens. Different breads, white bread, fine wheat flour for the Lord's table. Brown bread, coarser flour for lower tables. Trencher bread, very stale, hard bread used as plates. The brewer making ale, the process, malting grain, sprouting barley, then drying and roasting it. Mashing, mixing malt with hot water, extracting sugars. Boiling with herbs for flavor, hops weren't standard yet in early medieval period. Fermenting, adding yeast, waiting for fermentation. Kegging or barreling. Quantities, everyone drank ale safer than water, which could carry disease. Gallons and gallons consumed daily. Constant production. The brewer's knowledge, understanding fermentation, empirical knowledge, not scientific. Maintaining the right temperature. Recognizing when ale was ready. The pantler and butler managing provisions, the pantler in charge of the pantry, bread and dry goods. Distributed bread to the hall, ensured adequate supplies. The butler, originally bottler from bottle, managed wine and ale, served the Lord directly, a position of trust. Tested wine to detect poison or just for quality. Their status higher than kitchen workers, trusted by the Lord and lady. Better conditions, household servants maintaining the castle. The chamberlain's staff caring for the private chambers, chambermaids cleaning the lords' and ladies' chambers, making beds, emptying chamber pots into the garderobe or a cesspit, sweeping and dusting, laying fires. Laundresses, the endless washing linens and clothing, bed linens, sheets for those who had them and blankets, table linens, cloths, napkins, clothing, tunics, shifts, hose. The process, soaking in water, often in a stream or river, beating with wooden paddles to loosen dirt, scrubbing with lye soap harsh on hands, rinsing repeatedly, wringing out heavy, wet cloth, drying, laying out in sun or near fires. The challenges, cold water in winter brutal, heavy work lifting wet cloth, constant labor, dirty laundry accumulated quickly, hands chapped and damaged. Seamstresses and spinners, textile work, spinning, turning wool or flax fibers into thread or yarn, using a spindle, hand held or spinning wheel when available. Constant, repetitive work, weaving, creating cloth on looms. Skill and patience required. Producing fabric for clothing, linens, tapestries. Sewing, making and repairing clothing. Embroidery, decorative work, often done by noblewomen or skilled servants. Everything hand sewn, no sewing machines. The volume of work, clothing wore out quickly. Constant repairs needed. New garments for the household. The grooms and stable boys caring for horses, the stables feeding horses hay, oats, watering, hauling water, grooming, brushing, combing manes and tails, mucking stalls, shoveling manure, endless, exercising horses. The importance of horses, war horses, destriers were extremely valuable. Riding horses for travel, draft horses for hauling, proper care essential. The hierarchy, the master of the horse, high status, head groom, grooms. Stable boys, lowest, doing the dirtiest work. The blacksmith and armorer, the smith forging, heating iron in the forge, coal or charcoal fire, bellows to increase heat. Hammering on the anvil, shaping metal, creating tools, horseshoes, nails, hinges and countless other items. The constant need, repairs, tools broke, metal fatigued, new items. Horseshoeing, regular maintenance, his status, skilled craftsman, respected essential trade. Some independence, his skill gave him leverage. The armorer specialized in arms and armor, maintaining swords, armor, helmets, extremely skilled, often worked closely with knights. The porters and guards, guarding the gates, the porters opening and closing the gates, checking who enters and leaves, hauling goods, heavy lifting. The guards, soldiers discussed earlier, but some were just sentries, watching for threats, maintaining order, living conditions for servants. Where they slept, no private rooms, servants slept wherever they could. The great hall after the fire was banked and tables cleared. Kitchens warm but smoky. Stables near the animals. Stairwells, storage rooms, any available space. Bedding, pallets, thin mattresses stuffed with straw or rushes. Cloaks or blankets. Sharing warmth and space conservation. Privacy none. Sleeping in groups. Noise, snoring, lack of personal space. Clothing, simple and practical, wool tunics, long shirts, and hose-like thick tights. Linen undergarments if they could afford them, cloaks for warmth. Simple leather shoes or going barefoot. Provided by the Lord, sometimes the Lord provided clothing, especially livery for hire servants, or cloth to make clothing, or wages to buy clothing. Patching and mending clothes worn until they fell apart. Constantly repaired. Food servants ate well compared to peasants, the diet leftovers from the Lord's table sometimes. Pottage thick vegetable and grain stew nutritious and filling. Bread coarser than the Lord's but still bread. Ale the universal drink. Occasional meat more than peasants outside the castle, where they ate lower tables in the great hall. The kitchen grabbing food while working, standing or sitting wherever convenient. Wages payment varied in kind, room and board the main compensation. Clothing, sometimes tools or equipment. Money small, wages a few pence per week or month. Depended on position, higher servants earned more. Some servants were essentially unpaid, just receiving room and board. What wages could buy little, most needs provided by the Lord. Small luxuries, a ribbon, a trinket, a drink at a tavern. Savings hoping to eventually buy freedom or start a trade. The workday for servants. Dawn to dusk and beyond, rising early before the Lord and Lady. Lighting fires, preparing breakfast. No alarm clocks, just habit and the rooster. Constant work, tasks assigned by the steward, chamberlain, or other officials. Little rest. Breaks for meals brief. Evening work until the household retired. Cleaning up after supper. Banking fires. Securing the castle for the night. Exhaustion, long hours, physical labor. Collapse into bed whenever possible. Discipline and punishment, harsh treatment, beatings common for mistakes, laziness, or disobedience. The cook might strike a scullion. The steward might beat a lazy groom. Physical punishment was normal. Dismissal, fired servants had no income or home. A serious threat. Fear kept many in line. The stocks, or worse for theft or serious offenses. Public humiliation or corporal punishment. The Lord's justice was absolute. Relationships and social life. Friendships and rivalries, living in close quarters. Friendships formed, shared work, shared hardships. Rivalries and enmities, jealousies, competition. Gossip, everyone knew everyone's business. Romance, courtship among servants, young people working together. Flirtations and relationships. Marriage if they could afford to support a family. Restrictions, some lords forbade servants to marry, didn't want married servants with families. Others encouraged its stable workforce. Illegitimate children, pregnancies, sometimes from relationships, sometimes from coercion or rape. Unmarried mothers faced harsh judgment. Children might be raised in the castle or sent away. Leisure, rare holy days, feast days meant less work, or at least different work, preparing feasts. Attending church services. Some celebration. Evenings occasionally, time to socialize. Singing, storytelling, dice games. Drinking ale. Brief respite before exhaustion claimed them. The vulnerability of servants, exploitation, sexual abuse, servants, especially women, vulnerable to abuse by lords, knights, or other servants. Little recourse. If a servant complained, they might be dismissed or punished. Overwork, no labor laws or protections. Worked until they collapsed. Injuries common, burns, cuts, broken bones. No compensation for injuries. Lack of rights, at the mercy of their employers. Could be dismissed on a whim. No job security. Sickness, illness and injury, hard work and poor conditions led to sickness. If too sick to work, might be dismissed. Some lords cared for sick servants, Christian charity. Others didn't. Old age servants who couldn't work were useless. Some lords pensioned off loyal servants. Others abandoned them. Moments of kindness and care, not all was grim. Good masters, some lords and ladies treated servants well. Fair wages, reasonable work, care when sick, loyalty rewarded. Community servants supported each other. Shared hardships created bonds. Celebrating together, weddings, births, advancement opportunity, skilled, loyal servants could rise. A scullion becoming a cook, a stable boy becoming a groom, then a marshal's assistant. Real upward mobility limited but possible. Learning trades, working in the castle taught skills. Some servants left to start their own businesses. A groom might become a blacksmith. A kitchen worker might open a tavern. The children of servants growing up in the castle, child labor, children worked from a young age, 7-8 years old. Simple tasks at first, carrying, fetching. Learning by doing. Education, most servants' children remained illiterate. Some learned trades. Rare opportunities, a chaplain teaching a bright child to read. Their futures following parents into service. Apprenticed to craftsmen if fortunate. Marrying and leaving the castle. The cycle continuing. The servant's perspective, what did they think? Acceptance, most accepted their status as God's will. The church taught that social hierarchy was divinely ordained. Questioning it was sinful. Resentment, some resented the Lord's wealth and their own poverty. But expressing this was dangerous. Grumbling in private, obedience in public. Pride in their work, a good cook, a skilled groom, loyalty to a good master. Identifying with the castle and household, hoping for a better life, for their children to have more opportunities, for eventual freedom or independence. The reality of life below stairs in the medieval castle was hard, often brutal, but it was also life full of work, yes, but also friendships, small joys, moments of laughter, the satisfaction of a job well done, the warmth of a fire on a cold night, the taste of ale after a long day, the comfort of familiar routines. Servants were not just anonymous drudges, but people with personalities, hopes, fears, and dreams, living their lives in the shadow of the great lords but nonetheless finding meaning and even happiness in the spaces they inhabited. Understanding their world reminds us that the castle's grandeur rested on their shoulders. Without the cook, there was no feast. Without the groom, the knight had no horse. Without the maid, the lady's chamber was cold and dark. Without the scullion, the pots went unwashed and the kitchen ground to a halt. The servants were the foundation, and while history remembers the lords and ladies, it was the servants who made the castle work. Here we pause in our exploration of the medieval castle. We have feasted with the lords in the great hall, marveling at the abundance and spectacle of medieval hospitality. We have descended below stairs to understand the servants' world, the hard work, harsh conditions, and small moments of community and hope that characterized their lives. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the castle at the end of a long day, the fires in the kitchen dying down, the scullions collapsing exhausted on their pallets, the grooms bedding down in the stables near the horses, the maid quietly banking the fire in the lady's chamber, and throughout the castle, hundreds of servants finally resting after another day of endless labor. Their work is invisible to history, but without them, there would be no castle, no feasts, no knights in shining armor, no grandeur at all, just empty stone walls and silence. When we continue, we will explore the seasons and special events that punctuated the castle year tournaments, where knights displayed their prowess, hunts that provided both sport and food, holy days that brought the entire community together in prayer and celebration. We will also witness the castle fulfilling its primary purpose as a fortress when war comes and the walls are tested by siege and assault. But for now, rest. The castle settles for the night, the watch takes its post, and in the great hall, the fire burns low, casting dancing shadows on the tapestried walls as the household dreams. Life in the medieval castle was not merely the daily grind of work and routine. The year was punctuated by special events that brought excitement, danger, community, and meaning, tournaments where knights tested their skill, hunts that combined sport with necessity, and religious festivals that structured time and connected the earthly to the divine. Understanding these events reveals how medieval people marked time, found entertainment, and created the memorable moments that broke the monotony of daily life. The tournament, martial sport and social theater. What was a tournament? Mock warfare, organized combat between knights. Originally resembling actual battle melees with teams. Later, more controlled events, jousts, individual combats. Training for war, entertainment, and social display combined. The origins developed in the 11th century in France. Spread throughout Europe, evolved over centuries, becoming more regulated and theatrical. The types of tournament events: the melee, early tournaments, the format, two teams of knights fighting over a large area, sometimes encompassing fields and villages. Essentially a small battle. The goal: capture opponents for ransom, demonstrate prowess. The reality: dangerous knights died or were seriously injured. Destructive, trampling crops, damaging property. The church condemned early tournaments: wasteful, violent, interfering with crusading efforts. The evolution gradually became more controlled. Designated tournament grounds, lists or tilt yards. Rules to reduce deaths. The joust, the classic tournament event. The setup: a barrier, the tilt, running down the center of the field. Two knights on horseback charging from opposite ends, each carrying a lance. The goal: strike your opponent with the lance, unhorsing him, was the ultimate success. The equipment: armor, full plate armor by the late Middle Ages, increasingly specialized tournament armor heavier than war armor, designed to protect against blunt force. Helmets with reinforced face protection. The lance long wooden pole 3-4 meters. Blunted tip to reduce lethal injuries, or designed to shatter on impact, spectacular but safer. Held tucked under the arm, striking with the horse's momentum. The horse-trained destress warhorse. Armored, sometimes horse armor was expensive. Controlled with knees and body, hands holding lance and shield. The scoring points for strikes to specific areas: head, chest. Breaking your lance on your opponent, most points. Unhorsing your opponent, victory. Multiple passes, best of 3 or 5. Other tournament events: sword combat on foot after jousting. Knights sometimes fought on foot with swords. Continued until one yielded or was defeated. The melee later, more controlled version: group combat in the lists. Teams of knights fighting. Rules to prevent deaths: blunted weapons, referees. The tournament day preparation: days before announcements. Heralds proclaimed the tournament, often weeks in advance. Invitations to nearby lords and knights. Merchants and entertainers drawn to the event, an economic opportunity. The participants arrive: knights traveling from afar, bringing squires, horses, armor, tents, setting up camp near the tournament grounds. Pavilions and stands: knights' pavilions, tents displaying their heraldry. Stands for spectators: the lord and lady, nobles, ladies. The common people watching from the sides. The day of the tournament morning: the procession display of heraldry, knights paraded in full armor. Banners and coats of arms displayed. Trumpets and heralds announcing each participant. A spectacle of color and pageantry. Checking armor and weapons: officials inspected equipment, ensuring no illegal modifications. Lances measured, blunted weapons verified. Blessing: a priest blessed the participants. Prayers for safety. The church's ambivalence, condemning tournaments but also participating. The jousts begin: the challenge knights issued or accepted challenges. Sometimes pre-arranged, sometimes spontaneous. Honor and reputation at stake. The charge trumpets sounded. The knights spurred their horses. Thundering hooves, the crash of lance on shield or armor, the crowd roaring. The outcome: one knight struck solidly or unhorsed, or both missed, running another pass. Sometimes lances shattered spectacularly, splinters flying. Sometimes knights fell hard, dangerous armor was heavy, falls could be lethal. Between bouts: knights resting, squires tending them. Armor repaired, horses rested. Entertainment: musicians, acrobats. The spectators: the noble ladies seated in the stands, watching their champions. Queen of love and beauty, a lady chosen to be honored. Knights dedicating victories to their chosen lady, courtly love on display. The common people crowding around the lists, cheering their favorites, betting on outcomes. A rare chance to see knights in action. Merchants and vendors selling food, drink, trinkets. A festival atmosphere. The dangers: injuries and deaths. Despite precautions, tournaments were dangerous. Knights concussed, bones broken, internal injuries. Horses injured or killed. Some knights died, less common in later, more regulated tournaments, but still a risk. Famous deaths: King Henry VIII of France died in a tournament, 1559, Renaissance period, but illustrative: a lance splinter entered his eye through his visor. Many lesser-known knights died in tournaments. The aftermath: the victors' prizes, money, armor, horses, sometimes the defeated knight's equipment. Glory and reputation enhanced, celebrated at the feast that evening. The defeated: ransom, sometimes the loser had to pay to get his equipment back. Shame if badly beaten, injuries to tend. The feast: the tournament concluded with a great feast. The Lord hosted, celebrating the day's exploits. Stories told and retold, exaggerated, embellished. The purpose of tournaments: training kept knights' combat skills sharp. Experience in mounted combat, timing, courage under pressure. Essential in an age when war was frequent. Social display, demonstrating wealth, expensive armor, horses, hosting costs. Showing courage and skill. Forging alliances and rivalries. Entertainment, excitement for participants and spectators. Breaking the routine. A chance for the common people to see their betters. Courtly love, the ideology of chivalry on display. Knights fighting for ladies' honor. Romance, however idealized and unrealistic. The hunt: sport, food, and ritual. Hunting in medieval life, not just sport. Hunting provided food: venison, boar, rabbits, birds. But for nobles, it was primarily sport and training. A symbol of status: only nobles could hunt certain animals. The forest law's royal and noble prerogatives, kings and lords claimed exclusive hunting rights in their forests. Poaching hunting illegally was severely punished: mutilation, death, heavy fines. Peasants forbidden from hunting deer, boar, and other noble game. They could hunt smaller game with permission or trap birds and rabbits. The hierarchy of prey: hart, male, red deer, the ultimate quarry for noblemen. Hunting the hart was a complex ritual. Boar, dangerous boars could kill dogs and injure hunters. Brave and prestigious to hunt. Hare and fox, less prestigious but still noble sport. Birds: herons, cranes, waterfowl. Hunted with hawks, falconry. The deer hunt preparation: the huntsman, the Lord's chief huntsman, located the deer scouting days before, identified a suitable hart, mature, with a good rack of antlers, reported to the Lord. The day of the hunt: early morning departure, dawn or before. The hunting party: the Lord, knights, ladies, sometimes servants, hounds. The assembly meeting at the edge of the forest, releasing the limer, a tracking hound, to find the hart. The excitement building: the chase, unleashing the hounds once the hart was located, the full pack released. The deep baying of hounds echoing through the forest. Riders following at a gallop. The pursuit crashing through undergrowth, leaping streams. Dangerous low branches, roots, uneven ground. Horses could stumble, riders thrown. The thrill of speed and pursuit. The kill: the hart at bay, cornered, turning to face the hounds. The Lord or a chosen knight dismounting. The kill made with a sword or spear, not a bow that was less honorable. The hounds held back until the kill. The ritual: the unmaking, butchering the deer, a complex ritual with specific cuts and portions. The huntsman directed. Parts given to the hounds, their reward. The hide, antlers, and best meat for the Lord. Portions to participants. The mort, the horn call announcing the kill, signaling success. Celebrating the hunt. The return, the hunting party returning to the castle. Tired, exhilarated, muddy. The hart's antlers displayed as a trophy. Boar hunting: more dangerous boars were aggressive and powerful. Tusks could disembowel dogs or gash a horse's legs. Close combat with a boar was terrifying. The boar spear, a specialized spear with a crossbar below the point, prevented the boar from running up the spear toward the hunter, pinning the boar at a safe distance. The bravery required: boar hunting tested courage. Knights took pride in facing the boar. Hawking and falconry: the noble sport, falconry, flying trained birds of prey, falcons, hawks, eagles, catching other birds, herons, cranes, ducks, partridges. The status of birds: different birds for different ranks. Falcon emperors and kings. Peregrine falcon earls. Goshawk knights. Sparrowhawk ladies. Owning or flying the wrong bird could be an offense. Training the bird: the falconer's art training took months or years. Building trust between bird and handler. Teaching the bird to return, not instinctive. The process: hooding the bird, calming it, carrying it on the gloved hand. Feeding rewards: building association, gradually allowing short flights, then hunting. The hunt: on horseback or on foot, carrying the hooded bird on the fist. Spotting prey, removing the hood, releasing the bird. The bird soaring, stooping, diving at incredible speed. The strike talons: seizing the prey, recalling the bird using a lure, a piece of meat on a string. The elegance: falconry was considered the most refined hunting, less violent than deer or boar hunting. Ladies could participate riding with a hawk on the fist. The return from the hunt: the feast of venison roasted for dinner, celebrating the day's success. Stories retold: the hart's cunning, the boar's ferocity, the narrow escapes. The social bonding: hunting brought the Lord and his knights together. Shared danger and excitement forged bonds. Loyalty reinforced. The holy days: the liturgical calendar. Religion structuring time. Medieval life was profoundly shaped by the church calendar. Sundays, the weekly day of rest in theory. Mass attendance expected, often required. No work except essential tasks. Animals still needed feeding. The liturgical year: Advent, 4 weeks before Christmas, preparation for Christ's birth. Fasting less strict than Lent. Anticipation building. Christmas, December 25, and the 12 days following the Nativity, Christ's birth. The greatest feast after Easter. Feasting, celebration, gift giving. The Yule log, wassailing, mumming, a time of joy and abundance. Epiphany, January 6, the visit of the Magi, 3 wise men. End of the Christmas season. Special observances and feasts. Lent, 40 days before Easter, fasting and penance. Preparing for Easter. No meat, fish allowed. Solemn, reflective period. Holy Week, the week before Easter, Palm Sunday, Christ's entry into Jerusalem. Maundy Thursday, the Last Supper. Good Friday, the Crucifixion, a day of mourning. Holy Saturday, Christ in the tomb. Easter, variable date, spring, the resurrection. The most important Christian holiday. Breaking the Lenten fast. Joy and celebration. Feasting, lamb, eggs, rich foods. Pentecost, Whitsunday, 7 weeks after Easter, the descent of the Holy Spirit. Another major feast. Saints' days throughout the year honoring particular saints. Local and universal observances. Some were major feasts: St. Michael, St. George, others minor. Celebrating holy days in the castle, religious observances, mass and prayers, multiple services on holy days, the chaplain conducting lengthy masses, the entire household expected to attend, processions on major feast days, religious processions, carrying relics, banners, crosses, walking around the castle or to a nearby church, singing hymns, sermons, the chaplain or a visiting preacher, often long, exhorting moral behavior. The Lord and Lady expected to set an example. Charity, almsgiving, distributing food and money to the poor. A religious duty, especially on holy days. The poor gathering at the castle gates. Receiving bread, ale, occasionally meat. Washing the feet of the poor on Maundy Thursday. Some lords imitated Christ, washing and kissing the feet of 12 poor people. A ritual of humility. Feasting and celebration after the religious observances, feasting in the Great Hall. Special foods for each holiday. Music and entertainment. A break from routine. Community bonding, holy days brought the household together. Shared religious experience, shared celebration. Folk customs blending Christianity and older traditions. May Day, May 1, celebrating spring. Maypoles dancing, crowning a May Queen. The church tolerated with some disapproval these pagan remnants. Harvest festivals, Thanksgiving for the harvest. Lammas loaf mass, August 1. Michaelmas, September 29. Combining Christian and agricultural observances. Midwinter celebrations, the winter solstice. Christmas incorporated earlier pagan celebrations. The Yule log, evergreen decorations. Feasting. The rhythm of the year, the castle year, was not a linear progression but a cycle, seasons turning, holy days returning, the same festivals celebrated year after year. This created a sense of continuity and meaning, connecting the present to the past and future, connecting the earthly community to the divine order. The castle was built for war. All the comforts, the feasts, the hunting, the daily routines, these were what happened in peacetime. But when war came, the castle transformed into what it was always meant to be: a fortress, a stronghold, a place where life and death hung in the balance. Understanding siege warfare reveals the castle at its most essential and shows the medieval world's harsh realities. The causes of war. Why did warfare happen? Feudal conflicts, disputes over land, rights, inheritance. Lords fighting neighbors. Vassals rebelling against lords. Kings asserting authority over rebellious barons. Succession crises, when a lord died without a clear heir. Multiple claimants fighting for the title. The Wars of the Roses, England, 15th century, exemplify this. National and dynastic wars, the 100 Years' War, England vs. France, 1337–1453. Wars between kingdoms. Crusades, religious wars. Personal grievances, insults, betrayals, stolen brides. Medieval honor required violent response. Economic motives, plunder castles and towns held wealth. Control of trade routes, resources. Warning of attack. News travels, messengers and scouts, riders bringing news of approaching enemies. Scouts watching borders. Days or weeks of warning sometimes. Beacons, hilltop fires signaling danger. A chain of beacons could spread warning across a region. Or no warning, surprise attacks, raids. The first sign, smoke from burning villages. Preparing for siege, the lord's decisions: fight or defend. If the enemy was weaker, the lord might lead his forces out to battle. If stronger, retreat to the castle and withstand siege. Refuge, peasants from surrounding villages fled to the castle, bringing livestock, possessions. The bailey filled with refugees. Provisioning, stockpiling supplies, food, grain stored in granaries. Salted meat, smoked fish, cheese, dried fruits, wine and ale. Calculating how long supplies would last, depending on the garrison's size and the refugees. Water, the well was essential. Cisterns filled. Rationing might be necessary. Weapons and ammunition, arrows, thousands needed. Crossbow bolts, stones for catapults and throwing. Spare armor and weapons. Repairs, strengthening walls, gates, towers. Fixing any weak points. Preparing murder holes, stockpiling boiling water or sand. The garrison soldiers, the household knights and men at arms, hiring mercenaries if time and money allowed, arming able-bodied servants and refugees. The castle becomes a fortress, no more feasts or leisure. Everyone had a role. Strict discipline. The siege begins. The attackers arrive, surrounding the castle, the besieging army encamping around the castle, cutting off escape and resupply, setting up tents, building earthworks. The first demands, sometimes the attacker offered terms. Surrender now, be treated mercifully. Refuse, face harsh consequences. The defenders usually refused, hoping for relief, or the attacker giving up. The attacker's options: starve them out. The simplest strategy, blockade, surrounding the castle completely, preventing any food or supplies from entering. Waiting. The timeline could take months or years. The attackers needed to supply their own army, a logistical challenge. Disease could ravage besiegers as easily as defenders. Assault faster but riskier. Escalade, scaling the walls, ladders, raising ladders against the walls. Climbing while defenders dropped stones, poured boiling liquids, shot arrows. Extremely dangerous for attackers. Often failed. Siege towers, tall wooden towers on wheels, rolled up to the wall. Soldiers inside climbing to the top, then crossing to the wall. Drawbridge dropped, men pouring onto the ramparts. The defenders' response: shooting fire arrows at the tower, trying to burn it. Dropping stones and beams. Desperate hand-to-hand fighting if attackers reached the walls. Battering rams, breaking the gate. A massive wooden beam, sometimes iron-tipped, suspended from a frame, swung against the gate. Rhythmic pounding. Covered by a roof, the penthouse, to protect the crew from defenders. The defenders' response: dropping stones and burning materials onto the ram. Lowering hooks to grab the ram. Improvised repairs to the gate. Mining, undermining the walls. The technique: digging tunnels. Sappers dug tunnels under the walls, propped up with wooden supports. When under the wall, they set fire to the supports. The tunnel collapsed, bringing down the section of wall above. The defenders' countermeasures: listening for digging, placing bowls of water on the floor. Ripples indicated vibrations. Counter-mining, digging their own tunnels to intercept the attackers. Fighting underground in the tunnels, dark, cramped, terrifying. The effectiveness: very effective if the ground was suitable. Difficult in rocky soil or if the wall's foundation was deep. Siege engines, catapults and trebuchets hurling projectiles. The catapult, various types: mangonels, onagers using twisted rope or sinew for power. Launching stones, barrels of burning pitch, dead animals to spread disease. The trebuchet, the most powerful, using a counterweight, a heavy weight dropping, swinging the arm, could hurl massive stones hundreds of pounds. Battering walls or towers. Some could launch projectiles over the walls into the castle interior. The psychological impact: the crash of stones hitting walls. The terror of bombardment. Sleep deprivation, constant attacks. Defenders' responses: repairing damage nightly. Building inner walls if the outer wall was breached. Targeting the siege engines with their own catapults or sorties. Greek fire and incendiaries, flammable liquids, pitch, oil, sometimes more exotic concoctions. Thrown in pots or fired from engines. Setting fires inside the castle. Extremely dangerous to everyone. Life under siege: the defenders. The daily reality: rationing, food and water carefully distributed. Everyone on reduced rations. Hunger constant. The weak, children, elderly suffered most. Exhaustion, constant vigilance: the enemy could attack anytime. Rotating guards. Repairs and firefighting. Little sleep. Disease, crowded conditions, refugees and garrison packed together. Poor sanitation, the latrines overwhelmed. Dysentery, typhus, plague. Death from disease often exceeded death from combat. Fear, the uncertainty: how long can we hold? The sounds: siege engines, enemy shouts, dying comrades. Despair if no relief came. Morale, maintaining hope, the Lord's leadership showing courage, fairness in rationing. The chaplain's prayers, spiritual comfort. Stories of past sieges withstood. Hatred of the enemy rallying against a common foe. Collapse of morale if the siege dragged on, if disease spread, if starvation loomed. Mutiny or surrender. The decision to surrender, negotiating terms if the situation was hopeless. The defenders might negotiate. Surrender before the walls were breached, better terms. The attackers might allow safe passage or not. Honorable surrender, the garrison allowed to leave with their weapons and possessions. The Lord's family spared. The castle handed over intact. Harsh terms if the attackers were angry after a long, costly siege. The garrison slaughtered. The Lord's family taken hostage or killed. The castle plundered and burned. Life under siege, the attackers. The besiegers' challenges supply an army needed enormous quantities of food, foraging in the surrounding countryside. Supply lines vulnerable to raids. Disease camps were unsanitary. Disease spread quickly. Sieges could collapse because the besiegers died. Morale sitting outside a castle for months was boring and demoralizing. Soldiers wanted plunder and action, not waiting. Desertion was common. Whether rain, cold, heat. Siege camps were miserable. Winter sieges were especially brutal. The risks: sorties, the defenders sallying out to attack the besiegers. Relief forces arriving. Political changes, the attacker being called away. The end of a siege: capture if the attackers breached the walls or the defenders surrendered. The castle taken. Relief if a relief force arrived and defeated or drove off the besiegers. The siege lifted. The defenders saved. Abandonment if the besiegers gave up too costly, too long. The defenders surviving. After the siege, the consequences. If the castle fell, plunder, the victorious soldiers looting, taking valuables, food, weapons. Destruction out of anger or to render the castle unusable. Fate of the defenders depended on the terms of surrender or the attacker's mood. Garrison might be executed or ransomed. The lord and his family captured for ransom or hostages. Occupation: the attackers garrisoning the castle, repairing damage, holding the castle against counterattack. If the castle held, survival: the defenders had withstood the siege. Exhausted, hungry, traumatized but alive. Rebuilding: repairing damage, restoring supplies, caring for the wounded. Gratitude: prayers of thanks, honoring the dead, celebrating survival. The impact on the region: devastation, the countryside ravaged, foraging armies, scorched earth, villages burned, crops destroyed. The survivors facing famine, refugees, people displaced. Some never returned home. Rebuilding took years. The castle's purpose fulfilled. Siege warfare reveals the castle's raison d'etre. All the architecture, the thick walls, the towers, the murder holes. The moat was designed for this. All the provisioning, the well, the granaries for this. The garrison, the armory, the discipline for this. When a castle successfully withstood a siege, it proved its worth. When it fell, it had failed. The medieval world was violent, and the castle was the response to that violence, a place where people could survive, where the lord could maintain his power, where society's hierarchy was defended with stone and steel. We have met the lady of the castle, but she was not the only woman within the walls. Noble women, servants, daughters, widows, nuns, and occasionally even female warriors all inhabited the castle spaces, each with her own experiences, constraints, and opportunities. Understanding women's lives beyond the stereotypes reveals a more complex and varied reality. The noblewoman's life cycle. Childhood: born into nobility, a daughter's value was in the alliances her marriage could forge. From birth, her future planned. Education and training for her role. Early education: ages 5-12, learning to read at least in the vernacular, sometimes Latin. Religious instruction: prayers, psalms, needlework, embroidery, music, dancing, courtly manners. Sometimes sent to another noble household to learn and forge connections. Adolescence and marriage: ages 12-16, marriage negotiations arranged by parents. Political and economic considerations paramount. The girl's desires rarely considered. Betrothal: sometimes in childhood, marriage at puberty. The dowry: the bride's family provided a dowry: money, land, goods. The groom's family provided a dower support for the widow if he died. The wedding: a major event, feast, ceremony. Cementing alliances: the marriage bed: consummation witnessed or verified, ensuring legitimacy of heirs. Adulthood: married life, her roles: wife, subordinate to husband legally and socially. Mother: producing heirs, especially sons, was her primary duty. Household manager, as we've discussed. Political partner: sometimes advising, representing the lord. Childbearing: the primary expectation, constant pregnancies, no reliable contraception. Childbirth was extremely dangerous: infection, hemorrhage, complications. Many women died in childbirth or from related complications. High infant mortality: perhaps 30-40% of children died before age 5. The lying in: when a noblewoman was about to give birth, she retired to her chamber, attended by midwife and female relatives and servants. Men excluded. Prayers, charms, amulets, anything to ensure safe delivery. After birth, if she survived, a period of recovery. Churching: a religious ceremony of purification, about 40 days after birth. Resuming duties. Widowhood: if her husband died, her rights. A widow had more independence than a married woman. She controlled her dower 1/3 of her husband's lands typically. She could manage estates, conduct business. Some widows became powerful figures. Pressures to remarry if young and from a powerful family, pressure to remarry for alliances. She might resist enjoying her independence, or accept for security, companionship. Remarriage sometimes freely chosen, sometimes coerced. A widow had more say than a maiden, but still limited. Older widows, some entered convents' religious life. Some managed estates until death. Some were honored and respected, some marginalized. Noble women who ruled regents and rulers when lords were absent, captured, or died with minor heirs, the regent, the widow or mother ruling for a child. Administering estates, dispensing justice, even leading armies. Examples: Eleanor of Aquitaine, 12th century Duchess of Aquitaine in her own right. Queen of France, married to Louis VII. Later Queen of England, married to Henry II. Ruled Aquitaine, participated in politics, patron of culture. Lived to about 80, extraordinary for the time. Countess of Buchan, 14th century, Scotland, defended her castle against English siege. Showed military leadership, countless unnamed women holding castles while husbands were at war. Managing estates competently. Their contributions often unrecorded but essential. Noble women and culture patronage, commissioning manuscripts, art, architecture. Supporting poets and musicians. Some women were poets themselves, troubadours in southern France. Learning, some noble women were highly educated. Corresponded with scholars, theologians. A few wrote, though most writings are lost. Religious devotion, many women were deeply pious. Owned books of hours, prayer books, often beautifully illustrated. Founded or supported monasteries and convents. Some became mystics or saints. The servants, women's work, the ladies' attendants, ladies in waiting, noble women, often younger or lower rank. Companions and servants to the lady. Learning courtly behavior, awaiting their own marriages. Their duties, attending the lady, dressing, bathing. Accompanying her, never alone, propriety. Conversation, music, reading. Embroidery and needlework. Personal maids, lower status servants. More menial tasks, cleaning, carrying. Serving the lady and her attendants. The domestic servants, the chambermaid, cleaning chambers. Making beds, emptying chamber pots. Lighting and tending fires. Hard, unglamorous work. The laundress, as described earlier, brutal labor. Washing in cold water, scrubbing, wringing hands damaged, backs aching. The kitchen maids, assisting the cook. Preparing vegetables, plucking fowl. Washing dishes. Hot, smoky, exhausting. The dairy maid, milking cows and goats. Churning butter, making cheese. Early mornings and physical labor. The spinner and weaver, creating textiles, a constant need. Spinning thread or yarn from wool or flax. Weaving on looms, skilled but repetitive work. The wet nurse, nursing infants. Noble women often did not nurse their own children to resume menstrual cycles and conceive again, sooner, producing heirs. A wet nurse, a woman lactating, hired to nurse the baby. The wet nurse's own child might be weaned early or given to another, a harsh reality. Her status, somewhat elevated, trusted with the Lord's heir, but still a servant. Complicated relationship, bonding with the child, but not the mother. The women's vulnerabilities, sexual exploitation, servants vulnerable to abuse by lords, knights, or male servants. Little recourse, complaining might lead to dismissal, or worse. Pregnancy, if it resulted, brought shame and hardship. Some women bore illegitimate children who might be raised in the castle or sent away. Pregnancy and childbirth, just as dangerous for servants as for noble women. But less care, no lying in, back to work quickly. Infant mortality, even higher, poor nutrition, harsh conditions, old age and sickness, when too old or sick to work, vulnerable. Some lords cared for elderly servants, Christian charity. Others dismissed them, cruel but happened. Women and religion in the castle, the chapel, women attended services, expected. Prayed for family, the castle, salvation. Religion was central to identity. Female piety, women were often seen as more naturally pious. The Virgin Mary as ideal mother, virgin, obedient. Many women found meaning and comfort in religion. Nuns and holy women entering a convent, some noble women entered convents voluntarily or not. Widows, unmarried daughters, those seeking spiritual life. Convents could be centers of learning and culture. Beguines, in some regions, semi-religious women living in communities. Not fully nuns, but dedicated to spiritual life and charitable work. an alternative to marriage or the convent. Anchoresses, women who chose to be enclosed walled into a cell attached to a church, living in solitude, prayer, and contemplation. Fed through a window, waist removed, but otherwise isolated. Extreme devotion, Julian of Norwich, Marjorie Kemp, famous examples. Women and medicine, healing knowledge. Women, especially noblewomen and midwives, were often the primary healers. Knowledge of herbs, poultices, remedies, passed down through generations. Midwives attending births, skilled and experienced, respected in their communities. Sometimes accused of witchcraft if things went wrong. The exceptional women, female warriors, rare but real. Joan of Arc, 15th century peasant girl who led French armies, claimed divine visions, wore armor, fought in battle, eventually captured and burned as a heretic. Canonized centuries later. Other examples: women defending castles during sieges, taking up arms. Occasionally women disguising themselves as men to fight. Unusual and often condemned, but it happened. Women in trade and craft in towns, not castles specifically. Some women ran businesses. Widows continuing their husbands' trades. Brewsters, female brewers, bakers, textile merchants. Limited but not non-existent economic participation. The complexity of women's lives. Women in medieval castles navigated a world that offered them some opportunities: education, cultural participation, management roles, but also imposed severe constraints: legal subordination, constant childbearing, vulnerability to violence. Their experiences varied enormously by class. A noble woman's life was incomparably easier than a servant's, yet both were subject to patriarchal authority. Some women found ways to exercise power, creativity, and agency. Others endured lives of hardship and oppression. Understanding their stories adds depth and humanity to our picture of medieval castle life. The age of castles did not end abruptly, but gradually faded as warfare, politics, and society changed. Understanding the castle's decline and transformation reveals broader historical shifts and explains why these once formidable fortresses became the romantic ruins and tourist attractions we know today. The changing nature of warfare, gunpowder and artillery. 14th–16th centuries. The early cannons appeared in Europe in the 14th century. Initially unreliable, dangerous to operators. Not very effective against thick walls. Improvements by the 15th century. Cannons were more powerful and reliable, could breach castle walls that had withstood centuries of siege. The end of the traditional castle high stone walls became liabilities, large targets. The concentric castle design obsolete. New fortifications, star forts with low, thick walls and angled bastions replaced castles. Changing military tactics, professional armies with gunpowder weapons. Siege warfare transformed. Castles no longer provided adequate defense. Political centralization, the rise of strong monarchies. 15th, 17th centuries, kings consolidating power, monarchs subduing rebellious nobles. Royal armies replacing feudal levies, centralized governments reducing the need for local strongholds. Suppression of private fortifications, kings sometimes ordered castles destroyed, slighted to prevent rebellion. Building new castles required royal permission. The castle as a symbol of independent power became threatening to monarchs. Examples: England, after the Wars of the Roses 1455–1487, Henry VII consolidated power. Many castles destroyed or fell into disrepair. Royal power centralized. France, Louis XI and his successors strengthened royal authority. Castles became less important. The shift to comfort and display, from fortress to residence. The Renaissance, 15th–16th centuries, new aesthetic values, classical proportions, symmetry, beauty. Comfort and display valued over defense. The chateau replaced the castle. Changes in architecture, larger windows letting in light, but weakening defenses. Elaborate decorations, carved stonework, frescoes, tapestries. Gardens and parks instead of moats and ditches. The fortified manor or palace, defensible but not a true fortress. Examples: the Lar Châteaux, France, Chambord, Chinenso, Amboise. Beautiful, elegant, more palace than fortress. Symbolizing Renaissance culture. Hampton Court, England, built by Cardinal Wolsey, later Henry VIII. A palace, not a fortress. Reflecting Tudor power and wealth. The castle as residence, some castles continued to be inhabited. Modified for comfort, adding wings, enlarging windows. The medieval core surrounded by later additions. Economic and social changes: the decline of feudalism, economic transformation, the rise of a money economy replacing barter and land tenure. Urbanization: towns growing, trade increasing. The Black Death 1347–1351, killing perhaps 1/3 of Europe's population. Labor shortages, social upheaval, questioning of feudal obligations. The end of serfdom, gradual varying by region. Peasants gaining freedom. The feudal relationship between lord and serf eroding. New social structures: merchant class rising, wealth from trade, not land. Professional bureaucracies replacing personal feudal ties. The castle's social function diminishing. Abandonment and decay: why castles were abandoned. Economic reasons: maintaining a castle was expensive. If the family's wealth declined, the castle fell into disrepair. Cheaper to build a new manor house than maintain a medieval fortress. Obsolescence: no longer defensible against cannons. No longer necessary, strong central governments provided security. Changing tastes: medieval castles seen as old-fashioned, uncomfortable. The new wealth preferring modern residences. The process of decay: gradual collapse, roofs failing, letting in rain. Wooden floors rotting. Walls cracking without maintenance. Vegetation growing in cracks, accelerating damage. Stone robbing, local people taking stones for building. Castles as free quarries. Accelerating the ruination. The picturesque ruin: by the 18th century, many castles were romantic ruins. Ivy-covered walls, crumbling towers, evoking the medieval past. The Romantic Revival: rediscovering the castle. The 18th–19th centuries: Romanticism, a cultural movement emphasizing emotion, nature, the past. Fascination with the medieval period. The Gothic aesthetic: medieval inspired. The Gothic Revival in architecture: building new structures in medieval style. Castellated mansions looking like castles but not functional fortresses. Restoring actual medieval castles. Examples: Neuschwanstein Castle, Germany, 19th century, built by King Ludwig II of Bavaria. A fantasy castle inspired by medieval castles but purely decorative. Now a major tourist attraction. The Restoration movement: Viollet-le-Duc in France, restoring medieval castles and cathedrals. Sometimes restoring beyond the original, creating an idealized medieval. Literature and art: Sir Walter Scott's novels romanticizing the medieval period. Tennyson's Idylls of the King Arthurian romance. Pre-Raphaelite paintings: medieval themes. The medieval period reimagined, often inaccurately. Castles as tourist attractions: the modern era preservation, castles recognized as historical monuments. Government and private efforts to preserve them. UNESCO World Heritage Sites: many castles. Tourism: castles as major tourist destinations. Visitors from around the world. Economic importance: heritage tourism. Education and interpretation: museums in castles displaying medieval artifacts. Guided tours explaining history. Reenactments: jousting, medieval fairs. The challenges: balancing preservation with access. Tourists damage fragile structures. Funding: restoration and maintenance are expensive. Authenticity vs accessibility: modern amenities for visitors. Living castles: some castles still inhabited by descendants of medieval lords or new owners. Windsor Castle, England, a royal residence for 900+ years. These castles continuously adapted, blending medieval and modern. The castle in popular culture: film and television. Castles as settings: fantasy, historical dramas. Game of Thrones filmed in real castles. Disney castles inspired by Neuschwanstein and others. The castle as symbol of medieval times. Literature: fantasy novels. Castles as settings. Historical fiction: the castle in the cultural imagination. Video games: medieval strategy games, building and defending castles. Fantasy role-playing games. The enduring fascination: castles evoke the medieval period. Symbols of power, romance, adventure. A connection to the past. The legacy of the medieval castle: what castles represent. Military architecture: innovations in defensive design. Influence on later fortifications. Social history: the feudal system made physical. Hierarchy and power embodied in stone. The community within the walls. Cultural heritage, national identity: many nations claim medieval castles as symbols. Connection to the past. Pride in ancestors' achievements. Lessons from the castle: the impermanence of power: even the mightiest fortresses fell or were abandoned. Stone crumbles, empires fall. A reminder of mortality and change. The complexity of history: castles were not simply romantic or simply oppressive. They were both fortress and home, symbol of domination and place of community. Understanding them requires nuance. The human stories beyond the stones, the people lords and ladies, knights and servants, children and elders. Their lives, struggles, joys, and sorrows. History is ultimately about people. And so, we come to the end of our journey through the medieval castle, from the foundations of stone and the evolution from wooden motte and bailey to mighty concentric fortress. Through the gates and into the bustling bailey, up the spiral stairs to the lord's chambers and down to the dungeons, meeting the people who lived within the walls, from the lord to the lowest scullion, following the rhythms of daily life from dawn prayers to evening feast, witnessing the great events of tournaments and hunts and holy days, surviving the terror of siege and the reality of warfare, understanding the complex lives of women, both noble and servant, and finally watching as the castle declined from living fortress to romantic ruin. What have we discovered? We have discovered that the medieval castle was far more than a military fortification. It was a complete world, a self-contained community where hundreds or even thousands of people lived out their lives. It was fortress and home, symbol of power and place of ordinary routines, center of culture and instrument of oppression, monument to human ambition and reminder of human vulnerability. We have seen that life within the castle walls was defined by hierarchy. Everyone from the lord to the scullery maid knew their place in a system believed to be divinely ordained. This hierarchy was reinforced daily through seating at meals, quality of food and clothing, access to space and privacy, and the deference shown by lower to higher ranks. Yet within this rigid structure, relationships of loyalty, affection, and mutual dependence developed, creating communities that were more than just collections of individuals at different social levels. We have experienced the sensory reality of castle life, the cold stone beneath bare or thinly shod feet, the smoky air from countless fires, the smell of unwashed bodies and cooking food and animals and waste, the echoing sounds of voices and footsteps in stone corridors, the taste of bread and ale and roasted meat, the feel of wool and linen clothing, the flickering light of candles and torches, the darkness of medieval nights, and the constant awareness of the walls that both protected and confined. We have followed the daily routines that structured life, the rounds of prayers marking the hours, the procession of meals from simple breakfast, if any, to the great midday dinner to evening supper, the constant work of servants that made the lord's lives possible, the training of knights, the management tasks of the lady, the administration of the lord, and the brief moments of leisure and entertainment that broke the routine. We have celebrated the great events, the feast, with its abundance and spectacle and social bonding, the tournament where knights displayed prowess and courted injury or death, the hunt combining sport with necessity and training, and the holy days that connected earthly life to divine order and structured the year's rhythm. We have endured the siege, the terror and boredom, the hunger and disease, the constant danger and the desperate hope for relief, understanding the castle at its most essential as the walls that stood between life and death, order and chaos. We have complicated our understanding of women's lives, seeing beyond the lady in her solar to the servants who labored, the widows who ruled, the girls who married at puberty to cement alliances, the women who bore child after child in dangerous childbirth, and the few exceptional women who fought, wrote, ruled, or achieved sanctity. And we have watched as the castle's age ended, gunpowder breaching walls that had withstood centuries of assault, centralized monarchies making local fortresses obsolete, changing tastes preferring comfort to defensibility, economic transformations undermining feudalism, and the slow decay of abandoned fortresses into the romantic ruins that would inspire later generations. The contradictions of the castle. The medieval castle embodies contradictions that make it endlessly fascinating. Strength and vulnerability, mighty walls that could withstand months of siege, yet ultimately falling to gunpowder, decay, or simple abandonment. Grandeur and squalor, the lord feasting in the great hall, while servants slept on the stone floor, magnificent tapestries covering walls while waste accumulated in garderobes. Community and hierarchy, everyone from lord to scullion living in close proximity, sharing meals and prayers and daily life, yet separated by vast gulfs of status and power. Protection and oppression. The castle protecting its inhabitants from external threats, while enforcing internal control and extracting labor and resources from the peasantry. Permanence and change built to last forever, symbolizing eternal order, yet constantly adapting to new military technologies, social structures, and cultural values. Reality and romance. The harsh realities of cold, hunger, disease, violence, and rigid social control, versus the later romanticization of knights, chivalry, courtly love, and medieval splendor. Why castles still matter. 1,000 years after the first stone castles rose, why do we still care about them? Because they are tangible. Unlike vanished medieval villages or plowed-over battlefields, castles survive walls we can touch, stairs we can climb, spaces we can occupy. They make the medieval world real and present. Because they tell stories. Every castle has stories of the people who built and inhabited it, of sieges survived or lost, of daily life and extraordinary events, of love and violence and prayer and work. These stories connect us to our ancestors. Because they symbolize the medieval world. Castles are the Middle Ages made physical, feudalism embodied in stone, hierarchy made architectural, the age of knights and chivalry given material form. Because they are beautiful. The soaring towers, the massive walls, the intricate stonework, the romantic ruins. Castles appeal aesthetically across cultures and ages. Because they evoke the past. Standing in a castle courtyard or walking a rampart, we feel a connection to the medieval world. Imagination bridges the centuries, and for a moment, we can almost hear the clash of swords in the training yard, the call of the watchman, the laughter from the great hall. Because they ask questions: who had power and why? How did communities organize themselves? What did people value? How did they cope with violence, hierarchy, and mortality? Castles raise questions about human nature and society that remain relevant. The final word. As you drift toward sleep tonight, imagine yourself back in the medieval castle for one final evening. Feel the cool stone beneath your feet as you walk across the bailey in the gathering dusk. Smell the wood smoke from the kitchens and the scent of hay from the stables. Hear the distant sound of the chapel bell calling the household to evening prayers, and the laughter of servants finishing their day's work, and the whinny of horses being bedded down for the night. Imagine climbing the winding stair to the great hall where the Lord and his household are gathering for supper. See the fire blazing in the great hearth, the tapestries glowing in the firelight, the trestle tables being set, and the servants bringing out bread and ale. Smell the roasting meat and the sweet spiced wine. Hear the conversations talk of the day's hunt, news from a neighboring lord, plans for tomorrow. After supper, imagine the evening entertainment: a minstrel tuning his lute, the soft notes rising toward the high ceiling, a story beginning long ago, in the time of King Arthur, the fire burning low, shadows dancing on the walls, and the sense of community as the household gathers to listen, to sing, to pass the evening hours before compline and bed. Then imagine the castle settling for the night, the fires banked, the household dispersing to their beds, the lord and lady to their chamber with its curtained bed, the servants to their pallets in the hall or the kitchens, or wherever they can find space, the guards taking their posts on the walls, and the night watch beginning his rounds, calling the hours through the darkness. From the highest tower to the deepest dungeon, from the lord's solar to the scullion's corner in the kitchen, the castle sleeps. The walls that have stood for centuries stand watch through another night. The stones that witnessed countless lives, births and deaths, celebrations and tragedies, ordinary days and extraordinary events hold their memories in silence. Tomorrow, you might visit a castle walking through the same gates medieval people walked through, climbing the same stairs, standing on the same walls. You might touch stones laid by medieval masons, look out from towers where watchmen scanned for danger, stand in halls where lords feasted and servants labored. The castle is silent now, the voice is gone, the fire's cold, the daily life ended centuries ago. But imagination can bring it alive again. You can people the empty halls with lords and ladies, fill the bailey with servants and soldiers, light the fires, sound the trumpets, and for a moment, the castle lives not as a ruin or a museum but as a home, a fortress, a community. Sleep peacefully, knowing that the medieval world of castles and knights, of feudal lords and faithful servants, of stone walls and flickering torches, of daily labor and great feasts, of prayers and warfare and the turning seasons. That world is gone but not forgotten. It lives in the ruins that, the European landscape, in the stories passed down through generations, in our cultural memory of what medieval means, and in our imagination when we stand before castle walls and wonder what life was like within them. The castle was built to last forever, to proclaim its lord's power for all time, to stand as an eternal monument. Most failed. They fell to siege or cannon, to decay or deliberate destruction. But in failing physically, they succeeded symbolically. They endure in memory, in imagination, and in the stones that remain testament to human ambition, human community, human hierarchy, and human vulnerability. And perhaps that is their final lesson, that what we build with stone may crumble, but what we build with story, memory, and imagination can last as long as people care to remember. The medieval castle, both the reality and the romance, remains alive in our collective consciousness, a symbol of an age that was neither as dark as once imagined, nor as noble as later romanticized, but was simply human, in all our complexity, struggling to build lives of meaning, community, and beauty within walls of stone that could protect the body, but never quite contain the spirit's yearning for something that transcends mortality.